So do we want to do introductions? Do we want to go?
I think so, yeah.
All right.
So is the sound coming through? Oh,
Yeah.
great,
Yes.
yeah, that's easy. Yeah, so I think let's just dive in. First of all, thank you so much for being here, everybody. Really appreciate it. We're looking forward to telling you a little bit about ourselves and the education team and what's going on with NEAR Education. This is the agenda that we'll follow. So we'll spend a couple of minutes just on a quick hello, and then 3 minutes each on a look back at 2022, what's happening right now in 3 areas for NEAR certified developer grants and lessons learned. And then we'll end with QA. Hopefully we'll have enough time to cover all of your questions as they come in, all right? So here we go. Why don't we start left to right?
Okay. Hi, I'm Bianca. I am the operations manager for the education team. I joined in February, and my primary role is just to make sure that we are helping with organization, prioritizing, and executing when we've committed to execution. So, Petar?
So I'm Petar Vujović. I'm a software engineer on NEAR Education. I've been here since February this year, and I've been mostly working on some NCD stuff, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to tell you about what we're doing. How about you, Sherif?
Nice, thanks, Petar. So my name's Sherif Abushadi. I've been working on education with NEAR Foundation for about 3 years now, and it's my pleasure to take this time with you here today and our team. We also have a special guest with us on stage. Laura, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Laura Cunningham. I'm the new GM of Education. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I think I've gotten a chance to meet many of you, but hopefully I can meet all of you by the end of our time together. I will introduce myself more deeply a little later in the presentation, but I'm super psyched about all of the work that the team has been doing with you all and all of the learning that we've done. So excited for them to present you know, what we've learned and some of where we're going.
Nice, thank you. And our honorary teammate is not here right now. Katya Abramova is in London. We tried as hard as we could to get her on screen and mic'd up, but we couldn't you know, get the technical wizardry together in time. And so this is as much of Katya as you'll see, but trust that she's alive and well and with us working on education at NEAR Foundation. All right. So let's take a look back briefly at 2022. A couple of highlights for you, and then let's talk about developers, fellows, and grants. So for the highlights, of course, many things that we've worked on, and of those, we're most excited to share with you news about a Platzi partnership. Platzi is like the Udemy of Latin America. And in cooperation with the NEAR Hispano Guild and community, we were able to launch a Learn Rust with NEAR program. So that's incredibly exciting because Platzi as a platform can get exposure to 3 million learners. And so that's thrilling for us, and hopefully it's good as well for the Platzi community. Has anybody here heard of Free Code Camp? Yeah, so of course many of you. And Free Code Camp, for those watching the recording, if you don't know, is a fantastic way to get started in learning how to build software online. All of their content is free and open, and you can go and get started right now at Free Code Camp. So we partnered with them this year, and they will be releasing a number of courses related to blockchain fundamentals and then building on NEAR, actually. So incredibly exciting with Rust and JavaScript for contracts and a number of front ends as well. So that's exciting because hundreds of thousands of developers, right as they're learning, will dive into that. And of course, they have billions of minutes of content, meaning these people are engaging with the platform. So it's very exciting for us and hopefully for them and their community as well. And then, of course, we did take some time in the last 8 to 12 months to build out a number of integrations with low and no-code platforms. In fact, Petar, you worked on Integromat, now Make.com. Was there another?
Zapier.
And Zapier as well, yeah, of course.
Yes.
So if you've heard of Zapier, if you've heard of Airbnb, and any one of these sort of low, no-code platforms, we have integrations with 12. You can see the list there. Millions of developers, citizen developers, Gartner calls them, that are plugging into this low and no-code movement. 3 out of 4 businesses are expected to be using these tools this decade. So imagine integrating with NEAR, building on top of NEAR, building Web3 enabled applications without writing a single line of code, of course, after you've deployed contracts and so on. So that's incredibly exciting as well. In terms of the developers, I think looking back, and then we'll look forward, thousands of registrations from around the world now. 1 in 4 people signing up for the development program are not software developers. So these are people who are excited about learning about NEAR, but are not actually trained in software development, and yet they can learn successfully how to read and make sense of smart contracts in a matter of hours or days with our program. So that's incredibly exciting. You can see here some of the statistics of sort of the trends. We had a couple of marketing events that we ran, but in general, good engagement and good growth there with developers. In terms of NEAR University certified developers, about 5% of the people who attended, 5 or 10% of the people who attended actually submitted and passed a demo. So it's a good marker of engagement. Who's actually building a demo, who's writing code, who's actually creating something on the NEAR platform and demonstrating their understanding of what's going on. Some people spend up to about a week, but a senior dev with 5 years or more can probably knock it out in an afternoon. So lots of learning happening there, and we're really excited about that. Key lessons here, makers have been asking loudly for a self-paced course. They want to binge watch, they want to go at their own pace, they don't want to wait for us. And also our code reviews have been a bottleneck. So we're working now with the DevRel team at Pagoda as well to build out automated tools for testing smart contract capabilities to make sure that people are actually building something real and meaningful on NEAR, but without taking the time to actually review their code one at a time. In terms of grants, hundreds of applications from around the world. We funded 50 projects across 15 countries. Average deal size around 35,000. Lots of interesting stuff going on, but millions of dollars have been distributed to the ecosystem in terms of grants, and that's incredibly exciting for us. A number of areas, you can see them here, decentralized ed tech and more. So feel free to ask us about that if you like. Here are a couple of exciting graphics to make you go wow. If you'd like, you can go wow now. Nice, nice, thank you so much for that, wow. And key lessons here were that exploratory grant making, it's chaotic, it's a little bit tricky to kind of track all of these different grants and all of these different specializations, so we need to slim down and focus our grant making. And of course, the actual reach in terms of numbers, new wallets, and so on, we weren't optimizing for that, so we didn't drive those numbers in the way that we would like to. NEAR University Fellowship Program had almost 1,000 people apply, technical and non-technical, from around the world, and about 1 in 10 were accepted into the program, ran for about 6 months, and we distributed about $1 million into the ecosystem, getting people to do really, really interesting, meaningful work. And so here are a couple of those screenshots. You can find some more on near.university if you like, but the fellowship program in general was a great experiment earlier this year. It's been wound down now, and we're thinking about sort of what to do with this program if we decide to relaunch it, maybe this year or next. Here are a couple of other statistics so you can get a sense of what was going on with the NEAR University Fellowship. 6 languages, I'm particularly excited about that. I like the idea of building out in other than English, and so that was incredible. And of course, a wide variety of initiatives there. And here are some more graphics to make you go wow if you didn't get enough of that wow last time. Nice. So lessons learned, too many fellows solving similar problems. Of course, we weren't optimizing for that. And too few fellows were actually shipping to mainnet. So the bulk of the 20 plus apps that were shipped to mainnet during the fellowship program came out of NEAR Hispano and the Latin American community. So it wasn't really as many applications as we would like to see next. Great work on their part, but we want more. So, Petar, off to you for NCD.
Thank you very much, Sherif. And you guys saw what Sherif was talking about. We had NCD and we had a lot of submissions. We had a lot of people from diverse areas, so all different parts of the world, different languages that they speak, different time zones that they're in. So it was pretty difficult to keep ahead and continue certifying people. We just wanted to scale more people. We wanted to get more people certified. We wanted to accommodate more languages, more cultures, but we became the bottleneck essentially. So how we changed that is basically by encoding our LMS and our NCD into an LMS. Let me ask you guys, does anyone here like waiting for other people? Weird. I love waiting for other people. So basically, we enable you that you just go at your own pace, you get certified, you go to the course, pass a quiz, and when you pass a quiz, you automatically get an NFT saying that you're a certified developer. And so far, we have had great feedback on the course that we created. Of course, this is just the first version of it, and you can see some stats here. Like in the first week, we had almost 500 people going through the course. We had about 10% of people completing and getting certified. So we're super proud of that, and we're receiving some feedback, and we're constantly improving the course that we have. We're also listening to feedback and trying to add more languages. We also have a JavaScript specific version of the course, so you can go ahead and check that out. If any of you want to go through the course, you can check it out at learn.near.university. We're also constantly looking for improving anything that we get. We want to create new modules, new courses, in new languages. We're also looking to accommodate modules and feature requests from projects that are already building in the system, in the ecosystem. So we want to basically make it so that it's a single point of reference for all of the key topics that we want to cover. And this also allows us to scale above the limitations of us as people, because we don't need to be there at every session. We don't need to put you to our schedule. You don't need to wait for us to be free to give an orientation session. We're basically just allowing you to go to the online course and do whatever you want. And with that, I'll give it over to Bianca.
Thanks, Petar. So as you heard Sherif talk about grants and some of the lessons that we learned is we had a really difficult time managing all of the grants and making sure that they delivered what they intended to deliver when we awarded the grant recipients. So we took a step back, we reviewed a lot of grants recently, and we decided what we were going to do in order to scale the grants program is make sure that we were very clear on what our criteria was going to be, and that we only selected a few so that we could really manage the process. Because ultimately the process was not only chaotic for us, but it was also chaotic for the people who were receiving the grants. So what we did, the criteria that we wanted was to make sure we partnered with people who already had a large audience, who were familiar with NEAR, and who wanted to do a little bit something different than what we were already offering new students. So the grants that you see that were awarded behind me have a potential audience of 2 million. We're looking to tap into 100K new students with that 2 million potential audience. And they're going to be delivering courses that range from a 60-minute video for brand new people to Web3, to a 30-hour interactive course building a game with Unity. And at the end of the day, essentially, one of them is actually targeting Web 2 users, which fits in nicely with the new JS SDK that we just released, as I'm sure you guys have heard about. So with that, the ask really is, if you know of anyone who is an instructor who has an audience that fits this criteria, or you yourself fit that, please reach out to this email address, let us know, start a conversation, and we'll see if it makes sense to add your course to the mix of grants that we have as well. And I'm going to hand it back over to Petar as we talk about a new initiative for the ecosystem.
Thank you, Bianca. So this is a new initiative that we have called Ecosystem Lessons Learned. So we figured that, yes, we can educate you, we can make our own lessons, we can create problems and give you solutions for those. But the true lessons learned are going to be coming from the projects that are actually building on NEAR. So we're recommitting ourselves to actually helping people out by reaching out to projects that have already faced those problems. And we just want to talk to you, find out what you're struggling with, find out where we're doing wrong. So we want to improve everything that we have, all the docs, all the courses, maybe even infrastructure. So we're talking to you, extracting the lessons you have, and just trying to make it better and easier for everyone to work within the ecosystem. Like many of you know, Web3 is cutting edge, so advancements in tech are going on all the time. Everything is new, everything is advanced. Not everyone has already been and done the problems that you have. So we need to engage the community to talk about those problems, see where those problems are at, and just communicate better with the community, because that's going to help everyone get better lessons, get better use cases, get better case studies, and just make the ecosystem an easier place to work in, to provide solutions that are better catered to the audience. Again, we're just trying to communicate with the audience, with the ecosystem, and find out what the concrete problems are so that we can focus in on those problems and solve them better and faster. So these are just some of the projects that we're talking with, and we're extracting lessons learned. There's going to be plenty more projects. We're also inviting any other projects that we are not talking to yet, to just come and join us and talk to us and share your feedback, share all the stories of the stuff that you were just annoyed by, stuff that you were happy to have a beer afterwards, after solving it, after facing all the issues, and just walking away saying, finally, it's over. And with that, I'll take it back to Sherif.
Thanks, Petar. So, we're growing the team, and with that, I'd like to introduce Laura, hand it back to you.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. So I did a brief intro in the beginning, but I wanted to give you a little bit more information about my background and why I'm so excited to be joining NEAR. So I have basically been really dedicating my career to expanding access to opportunity. I worked in government, so at the New York City Department of Education, largest school district in the United States. I worked in nonprofit at a charter school foundation, and more recently I have spent time at a really early pre-seed stage ed tech company, and then a later very high growth ed tech company. And so I joined NEAR, last Tuesday was my first day, so I've been here for about a week. The thing that really excites me about the work that we're doing is democratizing access to the future of the internet. And so we are going to be, sharing a lot more communication over the coming weeks about our overall strategy moving forward and some of the changes that we're going to be making and sort of the focus we're going to have. But today and this whole time I've just been so grateful to be learning from all of you about the work that you're doing, and so just excited to be part of this wonderful community. So thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you so much to the education team for all of the work that they have done so far. And it is just the beginning of the great work we're going to do together. So thank you.
Nice. Thanks so much. Okay, so I don't know if we have time for questions, couple of minutes. How that might work. Any questions, comments from the audience? We can always go back to those wow slides if you like. You didn't get enough of those. Yes?
I think
1 second, we're bringing you a microphone.
Technical projects?
No, geographical regions.
Go ahead and restate the question, please.
Just curious if you guys are focused on any geographical regions in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, you're familiar with the NEAR Foundation's Regional Expansion Initiative, where we've identified a number of strategic regions around the world, and we're partnering with various individuals that have presence there, an existing community, support network, and so on. Laura, do you have more on that? Yeah. So, I think the best thing to do would be to check out near.university for updates on that. But you can assume right now we're operating in about half a dozen languages with content and outreach and so on. And there are a number of communities, for example, like the Ukraine community is reaching out and saying, hey, we have experience in education. What can we do to help? And what we do is basically give them all of our content. Everything on near.university is open source and available for you to reuse, repurpose, no problem at all. And a little bit of financial support, a little bit of content support, some technical expertise, and they go off at their own pace. So there are no breaks in terms of regional expansion, but there are some, some focus in some of the areas around the world. So, Any other questions? If not, thank you so much for your time and attention today.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Enjoy the day. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the education team for presenting some highlights about education. Looks like more people have joined now, so maybe have a late night. Our next guest needs no introduction, but if you haven't met him yet, it's Cameron Dennis from the Banyan Collective. So please give a warm welcome to Dennis. Also, for people who have just joined, it's channel 16 on the headphones. So please welcome Dennis again.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hey, so my name is Cameron Dennis, CEO of the Banyan Collective. We are a new ecosystem as a management startup focused on scaling Near in the United States. The mission is to create a more grassroots, bottom-up approach to ecosystem growth in the United States, where we will be running a series of hackathons, bounty programs, meetups, and a lot of other really cool stuff. But before diving into that, tell you a little bit about myself. I've been working at the Near Foundation for the last 2 years, primarily on the business development team, developer relations, and a bunch of other stuff, primarily just looking to fill the gaps of the ecosystem. And the whole point here is, how do we scale the open web to make it much more accessible? And having very clear call to actions for people to get more involved if they are actively interested in building. So, but before joining the Near ecosystem, I started a blockchain education nonprofit where we start blockchain development courses at universities. Been doing this for about 5 years, and originally from Miami, Florida. So just to dive in, what are the problems? So right now, Near is an amazing technology, but it does lack this sort of sense of community between the founders, specifically in the United States, where there's not enough clear call to actions for people to get deeply involved. And so besides that, there's also a sort of lack of, I guess, a shortage of physical meetups, and again, clear call to actions for people to meet physically. Because you're launching a pandemic, and that's kind of weird for an emerging technology. So now we're at this point in time where we're able to actually bring people together, and we just actually got an office space in New York City at Empire DAO, which is super exciting. And we're going to be running bi-weekly meetups there. So I don't know the best way to say that because it's actually twice a week, not every other week. So there's going to be one social meetup and one educational meetup. And then we're going to have a huge focus in San Francisco as well. There are plans to scale outside of these two cities, but in the short term, we're going to be laser focused on them to make sure that founders here and developers are very properly supported. But as well, there's other issues that are in the Near ecosystem, specifically around users and liquidity. So making sure that people can actually get together to address these issues instead of having it being so fragmented is critical. And we believe that starts with actually meeting physically. So you can read them on the board. These slides will be made available after, but the TLDR is we need more call to actions. So what are we doing to actually address this? Well, we're going to talk. To address this, we actually need to build a really strong set of values. And these values, before trying to put them into the ecosystem, we got to make sure that we believe in them and actually follow them within our team. So ecosystem first is the first one. And the whole point here is all this technology is really, it's much bigger than any certain individual. The open web ideally is going to last much longer than any of us individually. So, making sure that we prioritize the ecosystem before any independent person is a priority. The second thing is positive sum. So, there's a saying by Balaji, who's a very famous crypto sort of investor and CTO and influencer, where he says, "Win and help win." And this is sort of a analogy to the Banyan tree. We are the Banyan Collective, and the whole point is if we have a trunk, and for those who don't know, Banyan is a big tree. It's actually the national tree of India. And the roots grow from the top. So the idea is if we have a really healthy tree that actually grows really large and the roots grow from the top, they actually create new trunks all around it. And the point here is if you win, you should help other people win. And then that to me is it's just the critical piece that if we can scale this, we're going to win. Near ecosystems can be the top one. But besides that, if we're trying to really build technology for everybody, we need to make sure that they're involved in the process. So we have an amazing team, they're incredibly diverse, and we want to make sure that people are included. But to be clear, we are primarily focused on getting founders and developers into the ecosystem at first. The creators and communities and everyone else who play a critical role in the ecosystem are important, but they're just not Banyan Collective's target market. We will be working very closely with other ecosystem projects and be essentially acting as a giant referral network for them to essentially say, hey, there's an artist collective that comes to Banyan. Guess what? There are many other NFT marketplaces that they're better suited for besides us. So we'll be making these recommendations and connections across the ecosystem. Last thing is openness and transparency. This is at the heart of what blockchains really enable, and we have to make sure it's tangibly a part of our values and our practices. So longer term, we will be operating, I know the team doesn't fully know this right now, but as a DAO. We're not quite there yet. We're still sort of like getting started. But the whole point here is if we actually are able to scale primarily in San Francisco and New York and create a playbook, we can implement this playbook time and time again across the United States and eventually the world. So to move on, how do we actually support projects? Well, projects always start with an idea. And then they start building, and they, whether it be at a hackathon or any sort of just chipping away at home, creating an MVP. Then they're going to need a community. So we're going to be running a series of hackathons. I'll show you the schedule later. A hackathon a month. So we're just pumping them out, making sure, again, that there's tangible call to actions for people to get more involved. Once they have that MVP, then we can connect them to community. Again, almost daily meetups across the United States. Eventually, we're not there yet. Right now, we're just primarily focused SF in New York. But once, fast forward a year, I'm assuming there's going to be a meetup every single day somewhere in the United States. And so that's where we want to make sure that we're highlighting the project's building. Once you have MVP, go get user testing. Go join the community. We'll be running Twitter Spaces and all these different community groups. So that's where we're actually plugging them in. Next thing is around funding. People need early stage investment. People need grants. Projects won't be successful unless they have capital. So working very closely with the NEAR Foundation, we'll be able to connect them directly to the grant program, help them actually structure their grant to ensure its success. And then later on, connect them to VCs. Just for some context, I've been doing this at the NEAR Foundation for the last 2 years. This is my day-to-day. Now we're essentially spinning out, scaling the team. How do we just multiply these efforts, not just in the United States, but later on eventually. But the whole goal is to create playbooks that scale. So just to move on, you need token economics, you need legal setups, DAO launch, token launch. We have all of these different support channels already. If you need support incorporating internationally, we have a network of lawyers that can help. If you want to make sure that you have liquidity, well, we work with Proximity to connect you to market makers. It's a one-stop shop for support, and making sure that it's much more bottom up instead of just the foundation or pagoda. So moving on, what do we actually do? Well, we're going to run these community groups that are focused on certain verticals. So if you're a wallet builder and you want to connect with other wallet builders, this is a very clear way to join the discussion. There's going to be a forum post made later this week. We've already had a few community group sessions. And the whole point here is how do we get them to identify the problems that exist in certain verticals. So wallets are a great example. People need social recovery. People need optional custody. There's all this really innovative stuff that no single individual is going to build out. We need to work together to identify these solutions, spec them out, and then put them, well, as bounties to our hackathon. And so this is where we're actually aggregating community bounties. If you're a founder and you have something that you want built, but it might not be a tier 1 priority for your team, spec it out. Ship it to the hackathons. We can get some sort of V0 implementation there, and then sort of move it on to production and eventually standardization. So next thing is around city nodes. I had mentioned the Empire DAO. So sorry, kind of going too fast, but the community groups. There's a wallet one and an NFT one. You can check out the slides later. And then Near Hacks, the first one's actually going to be in New York City next week. The party doesn't stop here. We have a space. We have about 150 people registered right now. It's going to be a 4-day hackathon. It's going to be amazing. Realize I only have a minute left, so I'm going to breeze through this real quick. But join the hackathon next week if you're going to be in New York. It's going to be amazing. The bounty board, manage the bounty board before. It's a nightmare. We need to make sure it's time-bound, and that's where the hackathons come in. Later on, we're still developing this developer advocate program. So working with the education team, making sure that we have enough people to teach about NEAR. If there's a hackathon at MIT and we don't have people in Boston, we want to make sure that people are able to represent NEAR in a very tangible way. So there's going to be a program dedicated to training intermediate and expert level developers. The education team has done a wonderful job in educating for beginners, but we need more. So city nodes, SF, New York, later on, Chicago, Austin, Boston, DC, list goes on. 15 seconds left. We have a bunch of merch coming. So, how do we actually make sure people wear their identity pretty much? And so we're going to be running a merch store, really ramp up the NEAR ecosystem and all the projects together. And this is our roadmap. we have a big house right now for Supermoon, a bunch of infrastructure builders together, and then hackathons. Next is Chicago. We have SF. We have eventually in Austin. We have more coming. Just check it out. And the main call to action, we have an incredible team. I'm CEO, we got Shot, Chief of Staff, Nicole, Head of Marketing. People come from the Terra ecosystem, Solana ecosystem, Polygon, super diverse set of people, and the whole goal is, well, let's just build together. The open web's the answer. All these blockchains are just a means to an end. Near just so happens to be, well, the best one. So next steps, sign up for Near Hacks, become a member. All we really want to do is make sure that we know your skills and interests to match you to opportunities in the ecosystem that match those skills and interests. Whether it's for recruiting, whether it's for bounties, this is the main call to action. Become a member, and that's it. 1 minute over. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Cameron, for the talk. We still have a bit. Thanks, Cameron, for here. While we wait till we move the seats and introducing our next speaker, feel free to check out the different talks on our websites. Ilya's going to give a final keynote at 4. CLGP team is also here. So make sure to check out the different talks and also walk around. It's day 3, so you probably know all the people that are here, but it's still great to connect with the different people in the Near ecosystem. All right, we're ready for our next talk. So please give a warm welcome to Jeanne, Bloch, who's going to talk about true regeneration, possibilities we haven't imagined yet.
Merci. Okay, yes. Can you hear me? But can we move this a little? No? Okay. So I want first, I don't know who I'm talking to actually. So if you maybe can move to this side of the chairs. Yes, do you mind to move to this side of the chairs? But then can I have the screen here as well? Okay. So, yes. So let's connect very well. So my name is Jeanne Bloch. I'm both an artist and a sustainability specialist. I've been involved in a project called Energy Crypto, which is through Value of Sun. And I'm also part of Motion DAO, which is on Near and on different Web3 projects like the Omega Working Group on Token Engineering Commons, for example. So you who are here, can you please close your eyes and imagine that you are in a concert? Imagine, please, that you are in a concert of your favorite artist, that you have bought your tickets way in advance, that you're going to get a POAP, that you might buy a t-shirt after the concert, and that you really are having a great time in this amazing concert hall with amazing singer or performer that you have admired for many times. Okay, so what I want to say, now you can open your eyes, is that music has not been always this way. Music was also actually a place where people were performing together and you had no separation between the composers, the players, the performers, and the ones that were producing the music, the sound. And this way, and I'm taking this information from a researcher called Michael Spitzer, who wrote an amazing book called The Musical Human, A History of Life on Earth. And he was explaining how much music was actually a way of decentralization instead of a way of centralization. And it started to be a tool at the service of power with the invention by an Italian monk 1,000 years ago of the staff notation. So the staff notation, you know, the 5 lines for the music, were a way to capture something that was not capturable. It was like capturing a butterfly. It was something that was belonging to the instant of the creation, and suddenly it was something that was made to be reproduced. And this was used even with Cortés when he invaded the Americas and he decimated all the Aztecs. 10 years after he has killed all the Aztecs, you had Aztecs singing Spanish church songs in what we call today Mexico. So the way that music has been used as a tool for power, because it became an object, because it became a separation from your own creativity, because you were there, it was on this slide, and you were reproducing identically the same type of, you were asked to reproduce identically. And this is something we continue to do today. This is why I take the example of music, because it's an example that we can relate still today, and we can think of the objectivization of everything from such a long time ago. And other way to think differently of what we do today is, for example, the history of the electrical grid. The art historian Fanny Lopez made a research about the fact that actually the notion that we take for granted today of electrical grid that are centralized, and we think that we do need to connect in a centralized way to energy, was a choice that was made at the beginning with the thinking of the network. So you had an option of figuring out decentralized networks for people and individual households to connect to power, but actually it was decided not to do it. It was a choice to make it centralized. And it's the same with consumer culture, consumer markets. It was a choice to go to, it was a choice to decide that what are we going to do with this new technology, with these new techniques that we had, these new machines that were helped the industrialist companies to produce so much. And the choice and the alternative was to maybe make workers work less, to maybe have more time, because workers were working so much at the beginning of the 20th century. And it was a decision with all the Taylorism and all this culture to create mass market. It was an informed decision to decide that we are going to make people feel they are lacking so they can compensate. And this has been researched by historians of consumer culture, like in Captain of Conscientiousness, who was written by, forgot, Stuart Even, for example. And the same, last example I want to say is also with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence was, you were in the 50s, you had in the US 2 different type of meetings. One, people that gathered interdisciplinary teams in New York, and another one where it was only mathematicians in Dartmouth, and it's this one that was chosen. So all the time you had an alternative between the possibilities to have something that was more connected to your human and something that were more technical and more in a centralized and powerful way. And we always make this choice. So in order to keep opening your minds to keep, this is what I'm trying to articulate here, is that how we can look at what we do today in a different ways. And we do need to do it if we want to go into true regeneration. So what I'm advocating for today is to bring knowledge diversity in the way we bring these new infrastructures. And I hope you have understood with the examples I gave before that it was a choice that we always had, and we made sometimes some decision that we are paying the cost for today, actually. So NEAR is definitely a very interesting environment because it gives a very special place to artists and creators. And that's a place where we can start to build true interdisciplinary collaboration. And on NEAR, Motion DAO, with this collective of artists that I belong to, you have some artists that already started to think about that. And it's very interesting to see that you have some artists and designers like Rena, who started an NFT-based game called The Fact of Existing, which actually is addressing this question of how you can connect, with your authentic self in order to create in a more responsible way. Another artist from Motion DAO is Mariana Carranza, who started Forest Stillness, which is questioning if we can have an economy of stillness, and is developing, it's a way to explore the value of forests, for example. And if we don't question the centrality of consumer culture today, we are not going to save anything, And actually, fighting climate change is not the goal, the objective. Climate change is only a symptom. It's a symptom of a culture that we have and we belong to, especially the Western culture, that is destroying the life on Earth. So what I'm talking about is to figure out how we can embrace values that help us create together systems that are relate to life, that are conveying the values of life. And so this is what we have starting to do with Value of Solar, which is an art program that has been initiated by Semnem Ruszczyska, who is a token engineer carrying the project of Unergy Crypto. And together, we have worked with this idea that if we are exploring with art, we might get some interesting insights that is going to help us develop Unergy Crypto. So what is Unergy Crypto? Very quickly, it's an app that allows individuals to invest into solar energy directly, which is very uncommon, and to get a revenue share, and to get also carbon credit through NFTs, through aesthetics NFTs. And if you think about it, this is such a disruptive proposition. It doesn't relate to traditional consumer good, and it doesn't relate either to traditional investment proposition. So how do you value this to people in order to be able to get more, to create a movement of people, individuals that are going to get into solar energy and to support this solution in a way that is going to be valuable with them as well. So in order to the type of question that we have investigated and that we have acknowledged during this process of creating an art program that was in exhibition in Paris already and also in Lisbon before, is that what are people appreciate or not to be rewarded with carbon credits? What does that mean? For an individuals, today we keep talking about carbon credits, but it's a financial tools. But at individual levels, do we want to talk about that? Do we want to have an usage of carbon credit? And do we want people to burn or not the carbon credit? Because we don't want them to use them as a way just to allow others to pollute. So these are the questions that we're investigating. And one of the projects that was Grow a Forest was the data visualization of the true information that we got from solar plants. So it's a visualization of the CO2 that is avoided thanks to the plant that is powering solar energy. This was one of the things, and this is part of the dynamic NFT that we have on the solar app. The other project, this is an NFT, was a way, when I started to do that, I was figuring out that actually light and sun were always both considered since antiquity as energy and as art. You needed the light to create. And the beginning of photography and film was with light. So how do you connect NFT into the history of photography? And what does that mean to be able to sell NFTs from hands to hands? So if you think about the history of photography and film, and I use the technique that was the beginning of photography to make these paintings that are NFTs. If you think about it, what NFT contracts bring to this history of image and film, it is the fact that you can move you can move invisibly from digital hand to digital hand, from wallet to wallet. And this is connecting to energy. So what does that mean, the idea of a value flow? What does that mean to be, in terms of value instead of goods? And so I want to propose another time where you close your eyes. And can you imagine a world where we don't have the word good, where we don't have consumer goods, we don't have public goods, we don't have goods? Can you imagine that? And how we can create based on such a statement? How we can develop new Web3 projects, new interactions, new societies, if we don't have the centrality of good. That's super important. So, with Unergy Crypto and Value of Solar Art program, we started, and it's an ongoing research, to imagine what is autonomous consumer control that would, we identify the value of avoidance, what can we visualize, what is not, what can we have value the fact that you have a need for the absence of CO2, for example. We also imagine, as I mentioned earlier, what is the invisibility of the energy and the value flow, how we can have this central into our societies, into our different ways of creating a value and project. I don't want to say companies, but it's in this, okay, let's say companies. And also, what does that mean to burn carbon credit? And actually, burning carbon credit, it means to the true essence of consumption, because consumption means destruction. So if you want to go back to the essence of consumption, you can say, okay, we want to destroy carbon credit so we don't allow someone else to pollute. And so I wanted to highlight the fact that, as Ursula Le Guin said, who is a very famous science fiction writer, that, what imaginative art and storytelling give us is the ability to imagine alternative endings as attainable. So I hope I was able to share this with you, and I hope it's done. Okay, The last slide is not there. I don't know. Never mind. And now, if you want to close your eyes a last time and imagine what would be a world where you are not in the center, a world where you are just part of an architecture, a world where what you are doing is influencing the wind, is influencing animals, is influencing your neighbor, what is happening over there is going to influence you. Can you imagine a world where we are not at the center as human? Don't you think it's very difficult? I think it's super hard. I think it's impossible. We have been trained to think as we are totally in the center. We have been trained to think as we are subject and everything else is object. And I'm really advocating for the end of objectivization. Merci.
Thank you very much, Jeanne, for the talk. For people who have just joined, welcome. Make sure you put on your headphones on channel 16 to be able to listen to the talks. Otherwise, you probably won't hear. We're going to switch tracks, go more towards a business talk. So please welcome our next speaker, Chris Weir, who's going to talk about data. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just double checking everyone can hear me okay. Awesome. So my name's Chris. I am CEO and co-founder of Verita. And up here we have our mission statement. We think that everyone has the right to own and benefit from their personal data. And by doing so, we can enhance their everyday experiences. For a long time, people have talked about blockchain as being about ownership of your financial assets through crypto. But people have also explored or been talking about the idea of owning your own data as a part of this movement with Web3. And I'm here to talk about how Verita is offering, I guess, an architecture from a technology perspective and SDKs and tooling for developers to actually make this a reality. So DeFi, if you think of DeFi, it's a tiny fraction of the traditional finance space. If you look at the broader economy, broader financial services, we have health insurance, life insurance, asset insurance. They're $6 trillion industries. And Web3 has really barely touched those. You have consumer banking, which unlocks under-collateralized loans, mortgages, payments. And then more broadly, we have capital markets. And if you look at some of these things like consumer banking and insurance, we actually need personal data to unlock those use cases to expand the remit of DeFi. So there's a huge opportunity here to expand and I guess bring in mass adoption into these new spaces just in the finance sector alone. If we look more broadly at the economy, we have different sectors. We've got pharmaceuticals in healthcare, we've got food service, we've got fashion and global media advertising. So there's all these other spaces that all need personal data or information about consumers to target them, provide better services to them, or provide a product at all. So there's a huge opportunity here to expand Web3 into these other sectors. So how do we do this? What's actually required for mass adoption of Web3 into these other sectors of the economy? So as I've touched on, unlocking a lot more use cases in DeFi. It's a tiny fraction of what it could be in the long term. We need to leverage personal data to unlock those use cases. We also need to enable existing Web 2 businesses or startups and entrepreneurs to transition across to Web 3. We need them to be able to bring their customers across or bring their ideas across to Web 3 and disrupt the existing incumbents in the economy today. Everyone knows that there's some problems with Web 3 and crypto around the user experience. Problems with seed phrases, recovery. These are huge barriers of adoption for new users in the space. We need to tackle those head on. And then we have tokenized data. If you think of the economy these days, we've got the concept of data as new oil. You've got Google, Facebook, these large tech companies that have basically siphoned all of our data, and they're leveraging that to create products and services. They've got a monopoly on that innovation. So we need to create new models where users own their data, developers and innovators can create new tokenized models around that, and we can reinvent the relationship between individuals, their data, and how that's actually used. So to facilitate this, there's a few things missing. So we've got identity. At the moment, we have blockchain addresses, which is a bit of a pseudo-anonymous sort of identity that exists. But it's not ideal. We're talking about soul-bound tokens as an emerging concept. We're thinking about how do we have privacy-preserving information that identifies who I am, and then selectively disclose that on-chain in a zero-knowledge way to access a product or service. How do we bridge that real-world identity in an appropriate way onto the blockchain to be leveraged in smart contracts? How do we take that personal data and actually use that in Web3 to create personalized products and services, help with discovery? We also have the concept of multi-purpose wallet that we think is missing. So the idea of a wallet today in the crypto space is really tokens. Maybe there's a built-in DEX where you can swap some tokens. Maybe you've got some NFTs. It's almost like the early days of the web browser where we just had text and images, and then soon we had JavaScript, and then we had some mistakes like ActiveX and Flash, and then we had the evolution of really rich web experiences in the browser. We see that there's a missing piece here where the wallet really needs to evolve. It needs to have a simple UX, but it needs to evolve to incorporate identity and data, messaging, and all these other pieces to provide a really rich experience for users. And lastly, we have interoperability. We've already seen interoperability issues with the emergence of different blockchains, so we need to be thinking about how we can unlock this new world where there's lots of different messaging protocols, there's different data about individuals, and there's different blockchains. How do we have all this interoperate and work in a really meaningful way that makes sense for users, but is also really usable for developers? So one of the areas that we're looking at is credentials. So the idea of people being able to take their real-world identity and be issued with a verifiable credential. And this could be used to prove something about themselves. It could be a Know Your Customer KYC that can be reused. It could be a digital passport. It could be saying that you own or control a particular Twitter address or a Discord handle or a GitHub address, GitHub account. And so being able to unlock this, particularly around identity, is a key opportunity to unlocking traditional finance and compliance into DeFi. So there's a real opportunity here to bring real-world identity in a trusted way to expand the pool of capital in traditional finance. If we look at this from a broader kind of concept, credentials basically work in the way where there is a credential issuer that exists over here. And this could be an exchange, a crypto exchange. It could be a third-party verification service. There's a lot of companies that provide verification. You've probably gone through that yourself with the likes of Jumio, where you do like a Face ID and you provide a passport, or you hold up a picture saying what the date is or some sort of number. So there's a whole range of organizations that provide credential issuing sort of types of services, but they're centralized. So what we've got an opportunity here is to create a process where those issuers issue a credential to you as an individual. You hold that as a piece of your identity and data. It's private. It's just for me, stored in my wallet. And that's sitting down at the bottom. And so what we've done at Verita is we've opened this up so that we can have a credential stored and encrypted using my private blockchain key, but it can also be stored on a private, decentralized network and encrypted. So if I change device, if I go to another system, I can actually use my seed phrase and unlock that data. I can unlock that piece of my identity. And the last piece over here on the left is we have the ability to verify that credential. So if we think of the use case of verifiable, of reusable KYC, I could be issued a credential that says, yes, I am who I say I am. I am Chris. I'm from Australia. I can have that credential, and I can go and share that with 3 or 4 different crypto exchanges. Or perhaps I could share that credential with a decentralized exchange and use a zero-knowledge proof to prove that I am verified and a trusted individual, but not actually disclose my name or anything on-chain that's personally identifiable. So now we have a really powerful concept where I can be trusted and meet regulatory requirements to engage on the blockchain, but I haven't disclosed any personally identifiable information in doing that process. And so that's a really important concept here. We've got the user with a reusable credential, and we have regulatory compliant DeFi that can suddenly be unlocked with this kind of concept. In this scenario, we're just talking about like a KYC credential, but this could be anything. This could be me proving that I own a GitHub account, and so therefore I'm getting token rewards based on commits that I'm doing into different projects. There's a whole range of ways that this could be used to bridge real-world identity and systems with on-chain activity. So just touching on it again, so reusable KYC, I've talked about that. That unlocks compliant DeFi, which unlocks a huge amount of capital from the traditional finance sector. and also introduces ecosystem efficiency. If I can KYC myself once and reuse that across a whole range of projects across the Near ecosystem, there's a huge efficiency there from protocols. They don't have to reinvent the wheel there. And from a user, I get a much better user experience. So how can we actually leverage personal data more broadly beyond just this use case around credentialing and KYC? So if we think about the Web 2 incumbents that exist today, so down here we've got a range of different, I guess, monopolies, you might say, tech monopolies. How do we make this transition? So fundamentally, we have a problem today, where all our data is stored in these Web 2 companies. They have all of our data, they're monetizing it, they're making all the money from that data, but more importantly, they have a monopoly around the innovation around that data. You know, if Google has all of my browser history and my search history, well, they have a monopoly on how that's used. Whereas if I can get access to that, suddenly I can unlock innovation around that to everyone in this room. Everyone that is a developer, if they can access that, and I can consent for developers to access that, they can provide new products and services around that data. So if we think about that more broadly, what we're trying to do at Verita is create this pathway where users can claim their data and pull it from Web 2 and take ownership of that, store that in a decentralized way where they own and control that data, and then secondly, unlock that data for developers and innovators to leverage for brand new products and services that combines blockchain with your personal data. And so that's what we believe is the key to unlocking mass adoption, is how do we make this transition data, connect Web 2 and Web 3, and unlock brand new types of products and services. So how could this actually be used? So for instance, being able to prove that I own a real asset, I own a house or I own a car, being able to pull my financial statements from open banking initiatives around the world, take ownership of that data. Now I can do zero-knowledge proofs on chain, and I can prove to a smart contract that I own that car or that house. And perhaps I can then get an under-collateralized loan. Perhaps there's the ability to fractionalize the ownership of my car and leverage that into a smart contract. We have the tools here and the ability to unlock these types of use cases. Think about reputation. We've all got credit scores. Depending on what country we're from, there's different systems and processes. But if I can take that credit score, take ownership of that, and then prove that to a smart contract, again, that helps with that ability to provide efficient pricing and competitive pricing that can compete with existing solutions or financial products and services in the real world. There's an example. My brother-in-law is a doctor. He received 3 credit cards when he graduated because all the banks wanted him to do business with him because they felt that he was trusted. So being able to take that real-world trust and then leverage that for reputation on-chain is going to be the next evolution of having better pricing and more competitive products that allows the blockchain and crypto space to compete with existing products and services in the financial services sector. Think about this in insurance. If I want to create a decentralized health insurance product today, how am I going to do that? If you go and do that in the real world, I have to provide all this information about me, my health history to the insurer. I have to prove my address and where I live and all sorts of things. So we have this personal information barrier that needs to be overcome to offer that, which is a massive industry. Same thing with assets and life insurance. So being able to do that is a way to increase the total value locked in the ecosystem, in the Near ecosystem, if we can unlock those use cases. Think about social media. There's obviously a lot of different attempts to take social media and decentralize that. It's a very interesting problem space. Under this model, we can actually help people claim and take all of their data from existing social networks in one foul swoop, migrate that to 1, 2, maybe 5 different decentralized alternatives. So we can rapidly innovate. We can rapidly explore new ways of creating decentralized social media platforms. So being able to have that transition is a really important part, I think, of how we make this accessible to traditional Web 2 users. This is one that I'm personally really excited about. If you think about this in a few years forward, the ability for me to own all my data and then have an algorithm come to my data and actually run that algorithm of my data to learn more about who I am, combine that with real-world insight, and be able to create personalized experiences. The ability potentially to go to an e-commerce website, sign in with my Near wallet, and suddenly that website also I grant access to a subset of my data in a privacy-preserving way, and that website rebrands itself based on who I am. It says that I like the color blue, I've got size 11 shoes, I'm from Australia, so suddenly there's a whole different range of products and services that are focused there just on who I am, but I've not told a central company any of that data. This has just happened between me and the browser in a really privacy-preserving way. So there's a few challenges to make all this happen, and these are challenges that we're tackling at Verida. So having an on-chain bridge, how do we take that private data and use it in a public blockchain and do that in a privacy-preserving way? How do we take that, have a real-world trust anchor? Who are we going to trust in the real world to say that I am Chris and I'm from Australia? How are we going to have mechanisms for working out who we can trust? A smart contract has to be able to have some sort of whitelist or mechanism to determine who to trust. What signatures to trust. Tokenized business models, there's a whole new world and opportunity here. If we can give people their data, there's an opportunity to create brand new models around data. So how do we actually do that? How do we make it sustainable? Revocation, something changes, suddenly I'm a terrorist or I'm on a blacklist. So how are we going to, how is that going to be revoked? And so my access removed if that's an appropriate action required by regulators. There's some complex sort of technical and I guess legal implications that we're starting to sort of uncover here. And then private storage, where do we actually store this data? Like at the moment, you can't store private data on the blockchain. And this is a fundamental piece of the problem that Verida is looking to solve. So on that front, what we've done is we've developed the Verida Vault. So this is the world's first self-custody mobile application. It's in developer preview at the moment. We are just finalizing near support on the testnet at the moment. And what it provides, it gives you a decentralized identity that is effectively yours. It gives you a multi-chain crypto wallet. So the idea here is that you have a single identity, but it can connect to multiple blockchains. So we've got multi-chain capabilities built in from the very beginning. We have a data browser, so you can effectively browse your personal data that's been brought into the network that you own and control. All the data is encrypted using your private key that's stored on the phone using your seed phrase. And we have a messaging inbox. So that means that apps can send private notifications to you as a user of the app. They can request data. They can request blockchain transactions. It's a bit like Wallet Connect, but sort of on steroids. There's all these new capabilities that you can do around people's data and identity. But it's also got Wallet Connect built in, so you can easily integrate with your existing tech stack. We've built the first private data network for Web3. You think of IPFS, it's great for public data. It's great for images and video and sort of more static kind of data. There have been attempts to build databases on top, but fundamentally, IPFS is designed for public data. So what we've effectively built is almost like MongoDB that's decentralized. So effectively, people can run storage nodes. They can operate those nodes, and that stores encrypted data for users. And as a user, I can choose how many nodes are going to replicate my data. I can choose what country those nodes are stored in. I have a lot more control around my data rather than just sort of being spread out in the ether. And that's a super important point for regulatory compliant use cases like healthcare and finance, where you have to, to guarantee that data is stored in a particular country. But fundamentally, the data is encrypted, it's decentralized, and it can be connected into these different blockchain applications. The other piece that's super important is we've developed an API framework. So we've got this also in developer preview. And what it allows is a user can come in and connect to, at the moment it's Facebook and Twitter, but we'll be expanding that to things like Apple Health, GitHub, LinkedIn. In fact, anybody can create an API connector. And so what this is basically solving is that problem where people can pull all their data in and own it. And so once I've got my data, we then have the tooling for applications to request access to that data. So if you're building an application today and you would love to have access to all the pages that people like on Facebook so that you can provide a profile and maybe provide some recommendations to them on something, you could come to Verida and you could request that from the user. The user would be onboarded, connect their Facebook, pull all that data down, own it, and then consent to sharing that with your application. So we've got a full end-to-end data on-ramp there. And lastly, this is the piece that's super exciting that we're working on, which is effectively this ability to connect data in a zero-knowledge way onto different blockchains. So fundamentally, I have my data, it's stored and signed, encrypted in a private, decentralized network. I, as a user, control access to that data. I can take that data and I can consent to that being basically generating a zero-knowledge proof and then being able to bring that onto the blockchain. And because this is architected in a multi-chain way, I could own my data and I can put it onto Near, but I could just as easily put it on Ethereum. And the same tooling can work for developers. So that's it. This is some of the things that we're building in Verida. I'd love you to, if you're interested in this space, to check out our website, check out our developer documentation. We've got a lot of interactive tutorials where you can actually play with some of this stuff actually working. And we'll soon be announcing the fact that we officially support Near Wallet Connect 1 and 2 in the Vault as well. So Near apps can effectively leverage all of these capabilities. So there we go. Thank you very much.
Much. Just joined. Make sure to put on your headphones on channel 16 to be able to listen to the talks. We're going to follow up with a developer-oriented talk. So please welcome Volodymyr from Datrics. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Would you mind raising your hand if you ever used Excel, for example, to predict your financial indicators, any other business-related indicators? Not many people here. Well, okay. Technically, what you've been doing is using a no-code tool for predictive analytics, which is a part of data science. So technically, you have been doing the work of citizen data scientist. Welcome to the club. Now imagine if you want to use that same Excel and do something like pulling data from on-chain, building interactive dashboards, and getting them to like your company or your stakeholders. Probably that's not something that would get you thrilled too much. So what I'm going to be talking about today is how you can use like powerful dedicated data science tools and what kind of neat things you can get from them. Everything I will show is something that we've done. Maybe the data had been a bit redacted, but yeah, let's start. The very first thing you can expect from a good data science tool, it will allow you to make better decisions based on your data, right? So let's look at this specific example. Let's say we have a marketing department, and they are running different events, right? We see that there have been 2 events that correspond to inflow of new users, and we can clearly see that the first event is way better than the second, right? The rise in percentage and absolute values is a bit higher. The spike is bigger. So the answer is answered right away, right? The question is answered. Like the first one is better, but we're using a powerful data science tool, right? We can do some cool analytics with this. So let's not only look at the cumulative number of users, but also let's look at something like transactions, right? We are looking at the transactions, and we see that the spike indeed is higher in the first case than in the second case. Again, everything matches out, like bigger spike there, bigger spike here. We should continue going with the first kind of event and not the second. But at the same time, I might be like, hold on, this one actually looks a bit wider, right? Why is that? Maybe we can look at something like even more advanced. So let's not look at the number of wallets, but the number of active wallets. So people that have been using the tool, or like in this specific case, their wallet for quite a while, right? We look at this, and suddenly turns out that the first event was actually totally useless, and the second event was one that converted very nicely. So, because you've been like looking at a lot of data, and your powerful tools allow you to look at the data from different angles, you can do very good data-driven decisions. And we can see that the first kind of event actually should never be repeated, and the second one converts very, very nicely. Okay, so what else can a good, powerful no-code tool allow you to do? It can empower your teams to do analytics. So currently, I believe a lot of people are using Notion, are using Excel, are using other like no-code tools to do like reportings and just track their indicators. But at the same time, something like this, it would be quite hard to build like customly. At the same time, there are a lot of no-code data science tools that would allow you like to gather the data, analyze the data, split it, and figure out, for example, dashboard like this. And also the cool thing is these dashboards are shareable across your company and across your stakeholders. Let's look at something other. So the other thing you can do is not only build like simple visualizations or look at some specific numbers. You can build the whole like dashboards and the whole health tracking solutions, right? So we've seen that we have been able to build, for example, one chart, but you can build multiple charts. You can look at the wider picture, have an understanding of what exactly your indicators pretty much are, and yeah, it will help you quite a bit. And again, you can share this. You can share this inside the organization, outside of the organization. It updates automatically. You don't need to bother about like scalability, the scheduling. You don't need to send anything via emails. You just have a static URL that you can like expand and update in terms of visualizations, in terms of insights. And the main things here are like calls to actions, right? So most of the dashboards, most of the analytics, they are either telling you like what to do or telling you that something is wrong and you should figure out what to do. The good data science tool will allow you to work with multiple data sources. Sometimes those might be on-chain, sometimes those might be off-chain, they might be mixed. So you can think of something like pulling data from social networks, pulling data from web analytics, pulling data from on-chain, and combining them together. Here, for example, we have an also very cool thing. This is actually our Oracle that's been built totally using a no-code tool. Right? You can see, for example, on the top left, we are gathering data from Web2 APIs, so stuff like Binance or CoinGecko. We're doing like some cleanup of the data. Here on the bottom, we are pulling data from the smart contract itself to figure out if something has changed from the previous time we observed the data. We are making some decisions here, actually, and what we're actually doing is trying to understand if there has been enough difference to put the data back. And in the end, we write it to the Oracle, do some logs, and here you see, for example, what in the end we would have. We would have the updated values, and we are one of the validators mentioned there. And you can use this for various things. Also, like quite obvious, data science tool, like no-code data science tool, doesn't require you to write code. So if you would imagine something like this written using JavaScript, it would be a pain in the back to understand what is happening. If something is wrong, it's kind of hard finding the bugs. And specifically like intersections like this, when data like merges and converges again and then merges again, this is something that's very hard to track. And if you have a neat visual tool, you can track it very easily. What else? So what actually a good data science tool does, it allows you to run experiments and then put those experiments in production very easily, right? A lot of us are interested in doing A/B testing, validating hypotheses, but at the same time, not always the simulation will work well, so we need to put it into production. And for example, good no-code data science tool will allow you to do that. It will allow you to run multiple, let's say, data pipelines or models or simulations. It will allow you to have like static APIs that you don't need to bother about like changing as you go. And you can do a lot of different things, right? Simulations, as I mentioned, proper models, dashboards, and stuff like that. So in the very end, what a good data science tool does, it allows you to do more with your data with less hassle and share it within your organization and get very good insights. My name is Volodymyr Sofinskiy. I'm one of the co-founders at Datrics, a no-code tool for data analytics and machine learning, and thank you for your attention. Nope.
Right, thank you very much for that interesting talk. We're just going to take a mini break, 2 minutes, so just be patient while we prepare the next slides. All right, as we're getting ready, welcome to new joiners in the room. Make sure to check out the agenda on our website to see all the interesting talks. It's the final day at NEARCON, so make sure you connect with the different folks that are here. Next talk about NFTs. Please welcome Slava from N-finity. You can clap louder. Please welcome Slava.
Hello. Hi guys, happy to meet you. I'm really glad that you came to hear my voice. I can see that you have like some stuff on your hand. It's like silent disco. It's really interesting. Okay, I'm Slava. I'm CEO and co-founder for N-finity. We create a collateral brand new NFT marketplace. Some time ago, me and my friends were sitting and thought about what's NFT today, what's future, how economical part build there, and we decide that we find out some interesting situation that NFT is an art, and for us it should live forever. As for artists, as for collectors, regular users who just want to buy the picture. We thought that economical parts of it's usually too short. Basically, you have only, in 85%, you have only one sell for NFT, and after that it's or disappeared, or something, or somebody forgets somewhere, and it's not comfortable for artists, because as I mentioned, we think that art must live forever. And we decided to create a feature and marketplace which will prolongate the life of NFT and will stimulate users, collectors buy more, sell more, and artists create more art, create really great, interesting art. That's why I would like to stay a little bit quiet and ask guys to turn on video, and after that I will tell you how it works by my words. But please look at the screen and you can hear how it works.
Unity, a platform where a percentage of every NFT sale goes into a special collateral. While creating NFT, add name, description, and FAT, fungible allocated tokens, which is a type of a minimum sale price guarantee that grows with every transaction. Once NFT is created, you can sell it either through auction or fixed price. In auction, select a starting bid price in NEAR, auction expiration date and time. You can see the FAT that you have chosen on the screen. When the artist or future owner sell the token, every time this percentage of money will be allocated to the FAT. Because when the artist creates NFT, he or she sets up how much coins goes to the FAT collateral. Every piece of digital art has a cultural value, a subjective part. FAT, on the other hand, is an objective part value in NEAR tokens, created from trust each buyer put into the digital art piece. This is new collateral logic for people who love art and want to be sure that money invested in modern art will not disappear one day. Keep in mind, you can either have NFT or FAT, but not both at the same time. Think about it like stablecoins that are backed by the US dollar or ETH, for example. You can have USDT or DAI, but if you want to get your USD or Ethereum collateral, you exchange your USDT or DAI for it. When the future buyer needs to sell urgently or just sell for a desired price, he can burn the NFT, redeem the Fed for all previous deals. N-finity, the future of NFTs is near.
So thank you so much for your beautiful voice. As you can see, the main feature is FAT, Fungible Allocated Token. We call it FAT. Basically, it's simplified because each sale on our marketplace will gross up basic cost of your NFT. And it's something that will stimulate sellers sell more, buyers buy more. And for the artists, it's much more interesting whether their NFT can buy not only one times. We plan to sell each NFT at least several times, but there is it can be even 100 times. And FAT will grow after each sales. You can choose the percentage of this sale of this percent from 5 up to 99% from the basic cost of the NFT. As we can see this market today, it's something that can stimulate and push sellers sell more. Even deals can be not so big, but for today, coin plus coin, and it can happen fast really big amounts. So after, in case you will decide to sell it urgently, your NFT, burnouts, we call it redeem, the FAT, you will get all kinds of collected FAT that was collected by each deals before. So basically, you will have all FAT for your NFT. This structure was built not only for buyers and sellers, it's also and for artists, of course. We think about them previously. We care about them, so royalty tool is on the way. We plan to send them royalty after each selling of the NFT, after each deal. Not so much, but you can imagine that you are an artist, you live, for example, in Africa, in Brazil, doesn't matter, in Ukraine, and your NFT live your own life already, and you always got some royalty without do nothing, and your artist populates his name because of selling this NFT. We create this product with a beautiful team of the IdeaSoft, and I would like to say thanks for all of them. They are amazing and create this beautiful product and marketplace for us, for you. We are already on the prod. It's second day already. So hope to see you on our platform. And thank you so much, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Slava. That was an interesting talk. So for those of you who have just joined, make sure to put on your headphones, otherwise you won't hear anything. We're gonna jump into the next talk about, I've never seen this topic before. It's 5 things to know about crypto and accounting. So it's quite interesting. Please welcome Jim Thompson from Bitwave.
All right. Thumbs up. Can you hear me? Awesome. This is an interesting silent disco. Haven't done that before. So great to be here at NEARCON. This place was underwater day 1, so vibes are a little bit better on day 3. This is not the sexiest topic at NEARCON probably, but it is an important one. So if you're here, hopefully you're interested in accounting. Maybe you're a founder, maybe you're an operator at one of these gaming companies, NFT creators, you're in DeFi. This is specifically about business accounting. So if you need to figure out how to do your retail taxes, like this may be a little bit informative, but not totally the subject matter. This is about business work. So by way of quick introduction, my name is Jim Thompson. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Partnerships at Bitwave. Spent a number of years in fintech before, like a lot of people here, jumping into crypto full time, and have been at Bitwave for about a year now. What we do at Bitwave is we provide digital asset accounting and tax software to businesses building on the blockchain and using digital assets. So anywhere from small businesses to mid-market to the biggest companies in the space, we help them really bridge the gap between blockchain data and getting that into their traditional fiat general ledger systems like QuickBooks, Xero, NetSuite, whatever it is that you're using. We do this with small companies and at scale with folks like OpenSea and Magic Eden and GameStop using Bitwave to power their accounting and tax teams. So excited to talk to you today. The 5 things that we're going to talk about, let's see if I can get these right, is number 1 is really understanding your activity and your goals. So before you get into accounting, you need to know, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? What do my goals look like? Number 2 is going to be accessing your data. And everybody here is building on NEAR, so we'll talk a little bit about our partnership with the NEAR Foundation. They also use Bitwave for their own accounting process. And then number 3 is going to be the expertise required to actually execute on your accounting and tax process, both from a crypto standpoint and from a CPA standpoint. Number 4 is automation and scale, and number 5 is US GAAP. So before we jump into those 5, quick raise of hands. There's going to be 3 options here. You're doing accounting in-house, you work with an outsourced accounting partner, or you're like, Jim, what are you talking about? I'm just trying to build a business and then I'll worry about accounting later. So number 1, anybody doing their accounting in-house today themselves? This guy down here, okay. Maybe founders, maybe on spreadsheets. Number 2, anybody using a partner already, like a CPA? Nobody yet? Okay, that's interesting, that's surprising. And then number 3, anybody not doing accounting yet? They're focusing on just building, coding over here too. Okay, that's cool. I would be doing the same thing, focus on revenue first, accounting later. Good to think about some of these things proactively as well. All right, so for those in number 3 especially that haven't thought about this before, I will break the news to you that unfortunately the blockchain does not do your accounting for you. So I'm sorry, there's no magical Satoshi CPA out there just doing your accounting. We met with a founder the other day that was building a gaming platform, and he's like, actually, I don't really need to worry about accounting. It's all on chain. It's all good. It's like, okay. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So many reasons that you need to do your accounting, which I don't need to sell you on, but whether you just need to come to a tax number like we all do for retail purposes, you need to talk to investors with some concrete details about what's going on in your business, or you need to understand your basic accounting workflows to inform your strategy. These are things that you do need to be thinking about regardless of on-chain or off-chain activity. So in terms of understanding your activity and your goals, what we often see is you guys might be building on a platform, and then you start to have some success, you have some revenue, you have some expenses, you put QuickBooks in place, you say, okay, I need to get an accountant, maybe outsource, maybe I'm doing this myself as a founder. How do I catch up on this activity? If you're working with any outsourced accountant or you bring somebody else into the fold, you need them to actually understand your business. They can't just go look at on-chain activity on Etherscan or Near Explorer and say, I understand what's happening here and I can categorize that transaction. Good example, our friends at Doodles, they raised $36 million yesterday. Their founders blew up. They hired Becca out in Hawaii to do their accounting. She comes in, she loves Doodles, but it's I don't know what's been happening. I can't go look 2 years ago at these mints that took place and understand how to appropriately categorize that. So that's really number 1. The second piece will be these goals that I alluded to earlier. Is why are you starting to do this accounting now? Are you planning to get additional round of venture? Are you planning to IPO at some point? You need to start thinking about audits. Whatever those goals are really influence how detailed and how nuanced you need to get into the accounting world. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2 that we're gonna focus on is accessing your data. So you're all right, I know what this activity looks like. How do I get this data? And everyone says, well, it's on-chain. Great, but how do you get that on-chain data? I met a woman on the floor the other day who said she's doing 10,000 clicks a month through a Bloch Explorer, taking screenshots to get the data that she needs. that's not going to be overly effective. That's not going to scale really well. So whether you have all your on-chain data on Near, or you're on multiple blockchains, or you're using centralized exchanges or OTC desks, or maybe you have a custodial provider like Anchorage where you're keeping funds, you need to actually access this data and access those transactions, and then figure out a way to get that data from point A to point B being your traditional fiat general ledger. So how do you get that data? And in regards to Near, because we're at NEARCON, one of the most exciting things that we have going on is that Near Foundation is leveraging Bitwave for their own accounting, and we have been spending the last few months working with them to build an integration via API directly to the Near blockchain so that we can pull all of that data off of Near into our subledger software system and give businesses building on Near the ability to properly account for those transactions and push that into their general ledger. So more to come on that. We've finished the integration. We're kind of going through feedback and iteration with the Near team, but super exciting to enable this entire ecosystem as you guys scale and you start to get more deeply into this stuff. All right, so that's data. Number 3 is going to be expertise. So if you're building a traditional business, you really just need to think about, do I have a CPA that kind of understands accounting, and do I understand my basic business attributes? So, you know, I'm in manufacturing, I'm in oil and gas, I'm in distribution. Like, a lot of that doesn't carry the nuance that comes with digital assets. So what we commonly see is a business starts to build, you've got an accountant you use in your day-to-day fiat life, you bring them in, you say, hey, can you help me with my accounting for my NFT marketplace, for my gaming company, for my staking operation? And the reality is often they can't, because they don't know what you're talking about. Like, they are just a normal CPA, analogies to themselves, but it's hard. So what you need to do is either really commit to building that expertise in-house on both the CPA side and the crypto expertise, or partner with an outsourced firm. That's not what we do, but we have plenty of partners from boutique firms to the big 4 that know this stuff really well. So if you're thinking about this for this business, feel free to find me afterward. I'll introduce you to somebody that can help. But really thinking about the expertise around this is important. I'll give you a few examples of the decisions that you need to make when you're thinking about this stuff. And I'm not going to give you answers because I'm not your CPA and I'm not a CPA, and you know, none of these things have objective answers. That's how it works in crypto. But one example would be if you're treasuring NFTs, right? So you've acquired an NFT, or maybe you've minted your own NFTs as part of your project. You have a cost basis for that initially if you've acquired it. What is the ongoing value of that NFT? If you're thinking about your current treasury holdings, your cash position, what is the value of the NFT? Am I using a floor price? Maybe, that seems reasonable, that's a conservative number, but not all near knots are made equal. What if you have rarities associated with those NFTs? Do you use a third party to evaluate that? Do you just take a guess internally? Those are just some of the things that you'll want to think through internally for your cash positions. Another example, hanging out with the Aurora folks this week, and I've got their socks on. When you're thinking about bridging tokens, you're thinking about wrapping tokens. If you take ETH and turn it to WETH, you take Near and you wrap it, is that a disposition of that digital asset? There's not an objective answer on that either. If you ask Deloitte, you ask EY, you may get a different answer. So the big question there, is it a disposition of my Near, or is it a continuation of my dominion and control of that asset just on a new chain? The reason that matters, of course, is for your cost basis and tax implications, right? So if you decide that you've wrapped Near, that's different than or if you wrap Near and you decide that it is a disposition of asset, that is really important. Something similar, hands in the room, who's in a liquidity pool, or maybe bear market has been in liquidity pools before? Yeah, most people. So when you enter a liquidity pool, let's say that you have some assets, you have an NFT creator project, you've been doing well, you've got some Near that you're sitting on, you want to get some yield, maybe you have some USN. I bought a beer with USN yesterday, that was really cool. You take USN, you take your Near, you enter a liquidity pool, and they give you an LP token, right? So what has just happened? Similar to the wrap token concept, have you disposed of your stablecoin and your Near and acquired a new asset? If so, that means that you now have picked up a new cost basis whenever you then dispose of that LP token and acquire your assets back. If not, if you say, I'm continuing dominion control of those assets, I've just entered into an LP, and maybe that's a general partnership, however you want to define it, then you are not picking up a new cost basis. So sometimes you'll be like, Jim, like, why are you talking about this? Why does this matter? Well, for our clients that have ETH at like a $5 cost basis, and then they go in, especially in the bull market, into a liquidity pool, have they just picked up a ghost capital gains of $4,000 minus 5 that they now have to pay taxes on? Or are they comfortable saying, no, I still have dominion control of this asset, I'm in a liquidity pool, I'm out of liquidity pool, I'm generating yield, but my cost basis hasn't changed. So for those of you in the room that may have NEAR at 10 cents, I wish I was one of you. That would be really important if you enter a liquidity pool and exit. So at Bitwave, from a software perspective, we don't take stances on these things. We just build the functionality into our software, so you have optionality around however you want to handle it. But this is a topic, this is an example of something that you either need to think through deeply in-house, or you need to have a CPA expert that you work with, or some combination of both and get some of that advisory, and most importantly, be consistent with. All right, so we'll keep it moving for time's sake. So that is understanding your activity and your goals. That's thinking about how to access the data that you need to actually do your accounting. That's thinking about the expertise that's required to do that, both from a crypto standpoint and a CPA standpoint. And now let's talk about like scaling and automation. So let's say you figured those first three things out. You've been doing well. I know there's a lot of gaming companies here. We love the gaming space. We're working with folks like Mythical. We work with GameStop, who launched their NFT marketplace and needed to figure out how to get blockchain data into SAP, and that's where Bitwave came into play. Gaming is one of those industries where you start to scale really quickly, right? Microtransactions, NFT secondary royalty sales in your game. If you're having success, the transactions are popping up, and this applies to a lot of industries in crypto. As soon as you start to scale, some of the things that you've been doing at a lower level transaction just may not work, right? So if you have 50 transactions, you figured some of this out, maybe you're doing it in a spreadsheet, maybe you're using a tool, it's working okay. As soon as you go to 5,000 a month or 50,000 a month, things start to change. So I'll give you three things that we've seen our clients do at scale that work really well. And this is working for clients like OpenSea and Magic Eden on the NFT marketplace side. This is like Block Demon and Figment on the staking side. So lots of clients that are, this is where this is coming from. Number one is you're going to want to create some sort of like automated rules engine, right? So if you have any sort of consistent revenue events or expense events that are taking place into wallets, you want to look for consistent variables that are associated with those events so that you can set up a rules engine in a tool like Bitwave to say, okay, I'm an NFT creator, I have all my secondary royalty sales coming into this wallet, I want to categorize that as secondary royalty revenue and put that back into QuickBooks. I'm going to write a rule for that. So every time that takes place, it's automatically categorized, it's automatically synced. I now have a CPA that's reviewing that or somebody in-house taking a look at it and saying, okay, this is reconciled, this is good, but you're doing this at scale as you start to grow. The second thing that you're going to want to do if you really get to higher volume is what we call roll-ups. So again, gaming platform, NFTs, DeFi activity, once you start to see maybe 5,000 plus transactions a month, you're going to start to break your general ledger. Like part of the reason that Bitwave exists is that QuickBooks and SAP and all this, they're not built for digital assets. They're also not built for this kind of volume. Like it is not normal what we all do here where the volume just scales incredibly fast. So a roll-up is looking at transactions over a certain period of time and rolling them up into one. So again, let's say you're OpenSea and you have a bunch of revenue events over an hourly basis, you might roll those up into one event over that 1 hour period, so then you have 24 transactions over the 24-hour period that you're accounting for. So again, this becomes really important as you start to scale, or you will break your general ledger. Nobody wants to break their general ledger, or they can't do the rest of the things they need to do in their business. All right, so that's talking about scale and automation. And then the third thing that I'll say for scale is what we call wallet hygiene. So if your wallets are teeth, then at Bitwave we are your dentist, like encouraging you to floss. And that guy looked up, was like, what is he talking about? Brushing your teeth. So we're really encourage this thing called wallet hygiene. And what that means is really, really common, probably for some of you in the audience, when you started to build your business, you had a couple wallets that you used. You had some personal activity, you had some business activity, some of it's blended, very common for what we see. I would recommend ASAP separating that activity, making sure that you have wallets by your business, by your personal activity, but much, much more than that as you grow, really setting up your wallet structure in a way that makes sense, that's organized, that's named, that has hierarchical structure. You start a new NFT project, you move, you create a wallet specifically for that project. Maybe you create different wallets for different revenue streams and expense streams. Those things are really important, and I promise your accountant will appreciate it if you do those things. It will allow you to more effectively leverage a rules engine automation like I mentioned before, and it'll honestly just make more sense for your business and allow you to scale in a really sensible way. So we could do our own session on wallet hygiene, maybe we'll do a webinar on it or something, but that's a really important one I would recommend that you guys start thinking about now, even the ones in the audience that said, hey, I'm not actually doing accounting yet, I'm just building, I'm just coding. If you have wallets, start thinking about your wallet structure. All right, so that's automation and scale. The next piece, and really the last fifth topic that we're going to talk about is US GAAP. So that may be a little bit boring for some of the crew, so I will be brief on this one. If it becomes an issue for you, it's probably a good thing. If you're following US GAAP or you're thinking about IFRS, that means that you're probably scaling, you may be thinking about an IPO, you may have some auditors that are requiring it. You may have some venture capital that's requiring it. I'll just talk about two things related to it. One is what we call impairment. So impairment is the concept of how you treat indefinite life intangible assets. So just remember intangible assets. It's really pretty silly that regulators and other folks right now, if you're following US GAAP, treat crypto as an intangible asset that you need to think about impairment on. It's an accounting treatment designed for assets that are not highly liquid. Crypto is obviously incredibly liquid and incredibly volatile. So the way this works is that you need to think about what was my cost basis of which I acquired this asset, and what is the price of that asset right now. If the price of that asset is lower, you need to impair that asset down. So you may have seen MicroStrategy in the news talking about this, Michael Saylor ranting about it. They wrote about it in their 10K. They told various regulatory bodies how dumb they were, that this is how it works. I may or may not agree with them, but right now if you want to follow US GAAP, that's what you got to do. This is a really intensive manual process. We work with a large staking provider, not Figment, who I mentioned earlier, somebody else, who literally had multiple FTEs in an offshore office, just going through this line by line by line. The way we do it at Bitwave is on a lot by lot basis. We think about it daily. So I'll move on from that. If you're interested in impairment, talk to me afterward. I'd be happy to go on about it. The last thing I'll mention on this front is the pricing methodology. So the vast majority of our customers will typically look at like an average of a price to get your cost basis, right? So you acquire some NEAR token and you want to say, what's the price of this NEAR when I acquired it? That's important for accounting and tax purposes, obviously. You can use crypto compare, different tools, things we pull in automatically. But if you're following US GAAP, if you're listening to some of these things, then you're going to want to look for what is the principal market. And the way they think about principal market is pretty easy or simple on the surface, but a lot of nuance under the hood. And that is, what is the best market for pricing this token? What has the most liquidity? What's the most active? And unfortunately, that's not static. So that changes. Like McKinsey at Figment talked about the other day, they use a third-party consultant for this, and they have to keep evaluating this. But the point for the group would be, early days, it's probably fair to use this like average cost basis pricing, and as you scale, you may need to think more deeply about principal market, and certainly we and other folks at Big Four and others can help think through that process. I'll leave you with this. These things are constantly changing. What I've talked about today is hopefully helpful and resonates a little bit. Surely things will change next year and 2 years from now. It's imperative that you work with consultants and have the right team behind you, have the right software behind you. If you're interested in any of that stuff, let me know. Would be happy to talk about it after this. And looking forward to a full NEAR API integration launch at Bitwave. And thank you everybody for your time.
Can you take final, so the before last talk of this afternoon or morning. So for those of you who have just joined, make sure to put on your headphones and channel 16. Also make sure to look at the general agenda to catch like the last talks that will be happening. We have Ilya giving a keynote at 4 p.m. So still a lot of interesting things to do. So next up, we're going to be jumping into the NEAR ecosystem with the ecosystem funds. So please welcome Dean Thomas from Stealth Capital, Mads Pedersen from OP Crypto, Vineet Budki from Cypher Capital, and Vincent from MetaWeb, who's going to be moderating.
I think we don't see Vincent at the moment, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Hey, Vincent.
Hi. How's it going, Vincent?
All right, so can you guys hear me?
I don't think we can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, so really nice meeting everyone. To begin with, I actually thought I was one of the panelists, but I guess now I'm part-timing to be the moderator as well. But anyways, like really nice meeting all of you. I guess let me start a quick intro first, and then I will let everyone to do the same as well. I'm Vincent. I'm from MetaWeb VC, which is a near ecosystem focused VC. Near Foundation is our largest LP, but we also got some other LPs, including Dragonfly, GSR, Sequoia, and Ilya himself. And we are a team of builders, transforming to be investors. Our founder, Amos, he used to be CMO of Near, and then another partner, Danny, she used to run the developer community in Near, and we also have some other team members from traditional finance background, like myself. I did investment banking, tech investment banking in Citi back in the time, and someone doing entrepreneurship and media. So yeah, this is basically us. And let me move it to
Vineet.
Yeah, Vineet, our another guest for an intro for now.
Hi guys, this is Vineet. I'm the CEO and partner at Cypher Capital. Cypher Capital is a $100 million fund, a self-money fund based out of Dubai, which has invested in over 200 plus deals in the last 2.5 years. We have Bill, who recently left Binance Accelerator, as well as the $1 billion fund, who leads the team now. We've been investing for the last 2 years quite strongly in multiple plays, be it DeFi, be it play to earn, even layer ones. Casper was one of the investments that we did. We've been actively looking at Near as an ecosystem to invest. I think the community is quite good. It's growing. There are a lot of products being built on it. In fact, one of our investments, Few and Far, is here as well. I think you guys went to the first day party that they had. And that's us in a nutshell. Happy to talk to people who have great projects coming on the Near ecosystem.
Hey everyone, this is Maz from OP Crypto VC. So we're a $50 million completely Web3 focused pre-seed seed stage VC. Launched just over a year ago, so I'm an investor with OP. We are vertical agnostic, tend to be chain agnostic, so we're ecosystem partners with Near and a few other chains as well. Made around 20 investments so far over the past year. Deployed very conservatively throughout the bull market, but I made some core investments into core infrastructure like Scroll, building a ZK VM, connects the bridge, as well as some kind of larger gaming plays like Merit Circle and some play to earn like Aurori. Backed by top tier institutional investors in the space like Digital Currency Group, Huobi, Bybit, Republic, Vision Hill, etc. So actually, David, the founder, was at Huobi. He was running Huobi Labs for around 3 years and then transitioned into starting OP. So yeah, happy to expand on that and happy to be speaking with you guys.
Awesome. What's up, guys? I'm Dean. I started my career in traditional finance. I started my career at Goldman Sachs as an investment banker and then special situations investor and then private equity at Blackstone. Moved over to the crypto side, got linked up with Polygon when there was around 70 dApps on the network. I was an executive there. I was the global head of institutional, where we helped create Polygon Studios. We helped 2 acquisitions of Mir and Hermes, and we IPO'd 3 vehicles across the Swiss, Amsterdam, and Paris stock exchanges. From there, I run Stealth Capital, which is, our largest LP is Near Foundation, and we basically run a parallel barbell strategy between market neutral, delta neutral trading, which we're currently up around annualized 19% on the year, entirely USDC denominated, and also venture, private credit, private debt investing. But given the current CPI print yesterday and the given Fed environment, I think we'll be probably sticking around on the market neutral side a bit longer. And whenever the Fed eases up, we'll pivot back into the private side of the business.
Okay, yeah, I guess to begin with as a first question, do you guys regard yourself as a financial investors, or do you guys feel like you are part of the building team? What are some of the services or value add to your portfolio companies?
Again, interestingly, crypto has these elements where projects just don't want money. If you see the last bull run, people were getting oversubscribed in an hour. In fact, I just invested in one of the projects which was raising $275 million and it's oversubscribed to $400 million. Sui blockchain, I think everyone knows about it. Thing is, today these projects are looking much more, they're looking at media to help them with, they're looking at market entry for us. We specially position ourselves as the guys who can give a market entry to Middle East, India and Africa. Then they're also looking for, because retail gets quite involved in projects quite sooner compared to normal ways how startups raise money. I think they're looking at KOLs and things like that. So yes, we give a lot of value add in terms of these parameters, but again, I've been a startup founder for 15 years. I think in the end, the startup founders have to build the company up rather than investors. We can just provide them with tools so they can efficiently manage it in a shorter period of time. But and yeah, finally, capital is always critical for growth. So that's what we do at the moment.
Right.
Yeah. So I think to some extent, especially in the pre-seed seed stage part of startups, right? The capital is not typically enough for this project to succeed. I think that's kind of, if you're just applying capital, it makes sense potentially for larger rounds later down the line and more developed projects. But for us, we take a very, very kind of concentrated, curated approach to investing. So we deploy very conservatively into very high conviction builders, right? So just larger ticket sizes into fewer projects. So for us, what we like to do is we like to work very, very close with our portfolio companies, especially surrounding go-to-market in Asia. So we have on-ground support throughout the Southeast Asian region, and also basically helping our projects tap different siloed ecosystems in Asia, right? Think Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, China, India, right? Which all have their own different communities, so working with key opinion leaders, et cetera, to really help them establish a presence in a region that ultimately ends up becoming the most important region for the projects, right? So for Merit Circle, for example, we were their exclusive partner in their go-to-market in Asia. So yeah, we like to work very hands-on, kind of take an advisory position, right, with our projects, weekly meetings, et cetera, just helping them with their strategy and their product.
So I would like to kindly and politely disagree with my two panelists. I think it's really dependent, right? What they described is super helpful in a bull market when the money is flowing, interest rates are low, and money is the cheapest commodity. Right now, I would say the opposite is happening. So basically with Fed raising interest rates, money sucking out of the system, real traditional finance fixed income products offering higher yield than DeFi, money's a scarce resource right now in Web3. And so if you have money, especially in the next 18 months, you're going to have a lot of people coming begging for opportunities to get some of that capital. Whereas during the bull run, a lot of investors were basically forced into these really, really terrible SAFT arrangements, which are now coming to roost, right? You'll see this over the next 12, 18 months. They signed up to invest in these tokens, and they have no rights as shareholders, they have no rights as debt holders, and then basically the founder, if they choose to, can basically run off with the money and party with it or travel with it, and that's the end of it, right? So right now, I think it's really interesting because the markets are always fluctuating, and so what game we play has to be largely contingent on what the Fed decides, right? Like we're all kind of small ships sailing on the sea, and the Fed decides what the tide looks like and what height it's going to be. And so anybody who fights that tide is going to get wrecked. And so my prediction is obviously with the CPI print being terrible yesterday, we should only see further tightening from the Fed. And so if they do continue that path, the venture game that we've seen for the past 13 years with near zero interest rates is just not going to work, right? So all these so-called genius venture investors that made a lot of money in this past cycle, they were lucky because there's a lot of free money being printed to help fight the pandemic and make sure that people weren't absolutely getting destroyed. But now that we're tightening and inflation is the main target in terms of lowering inflation by the Fed, if you don't know how to hedge, if you don't know how to invest in fixed income, if you don't understand capital structure, and you're just YOLOing money into projects thinking you'll get a 10Xer for free, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. And you're going to see this with the top name funds, you're going to see this with the bottom name funds. I'd say 80 and 90% of the VCs have deployed 20 to 50% of their funds already at this point. You're going to see a tremendous amount of zeros across those investments, and it's going to be really hard for them to say like, oh, we're genius investors for the next fundraise, because venture doesn't work when interest rates are mid-single digits. So that's my contrarian view, but some people would like to disagree.
Again, investment is not always intrinsic to a company. You can find out the best founders and you can find out the best VCs backing it up, but 50% of the marks goes to external parameters as well, how the economy is doing. I know Fed is doing things which will tighten up the money supply, but haven't we seen these cycles multiple times. Didn't we see this in 2017? Didn't we see it in
The Fed never raised rates to the target for mid 4% rates.
Interestingly, what I have been seeing is fundamentals have been coming every time. China has done something someday, which has led to the markets
we're USD denominated, right? We're not RMB denominated.
See, cycles keep on coming and going. Markets keep on going up and down. It's what things are you investing in? And again, a lot of VCs, yes, they went in big time into the markets in the last season and never took profits. So that first he assumes that no one took profits. Maybe that's not the case for a fund where I built $10 million into $500 million. So we also are building a $2 billion mining plant in Abu Dhabi, which is quite known. So it depends whether these funds actually cashed out on some of those opportunities and have enough capital as well. But again, cycles happen, things go up, things go down. We are a long-term investor, not looking at the next 6 months or 1 year. So.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I think that's kind of the reason behind our strategy as well of deploying very conservatively, right? Like we're not actively spraying. I know that there is still a lot of money in the system, right? A lot of VCs raised towards the end of the bull. They have these different deployment schedules where they need to deploy that are still kind of inflating valuations right now. But that's why we're actually a bit underdeployed at the moment. So we're still sitting on a pile of cash. We're in no rush to deploy. If we see something where we have very high conviction in the project itself, right? Not as something more speculative or just because there's hype around it, but if we believe in these builders, because that's ultimately what you're doing. When you're doing pre-seed and seed stage investing, you're investing in people. So if we see these kind of opportunities, we'll deploy. But yeah, definitely wary about macro as well, right? That's definitely a big concern that affects it.
So just for full transparency, I'm actually an LP investor in OP personally, so nothing against these two funds, nothing against Vineet, nothing against Mads. It was a more broad statement across the so-called geniuses, investors who were on Twitter with hundreds of thousands of followers saying, oh, I know this is going to happen, I made this money doing that. I think most people have no idea which direction the market's going to go. I'd say 99.9% have no idea what's going to happen. And I would say the vast majority of folks who got famous or made money in the short term over the past cycle have no experience investing in a high interest rate environment. And so I think it's just a fundamentally different game. And you're going to see a lot of traditional finance people come into the space with much more experience, much better risk management parameters, and they'll do much better, and the returns won't be as sexy as the bull run, 50x, 100xers, but it's going to be some really, really attractive returns relative to a market that may be down like this year, 40 to 60% or even 80%.
Okay, yeah, I feel like we are actually on the same page on, number one, we do agree the current market conditions are not ideal, and we need to, go for a more conservative approach, while on the other hand, we are all bullish on crypto in the longer term, and then we trust the people, we pick the great team, and we try to provide as much value as possible. I guess before moving back a little bit more on the near-centric questions, I just wonder, what are the qualities you would see from founders that you think you would be happy to back them and you would be happy to work with them?
So personally, when I built up the parameters of investing on, I'm a startup founder for 15 years. So I've been part of accelerators. I have had a lot of investments done for myself as well. So taking what I have learned from there, I've always looked at founders who have some expertise. Everyone wants to go to the moon but has never been on a rocket. So these guys, have they built anything? Like when you look at, for example, Sui blockchain or Aptos, which came up, at least the guys were the founding team of Facebook's DM currency, which never went anywhere, but at least they have the technical know-how to back it up. What's the team consist of? Do they have the requisite skills to market this product, to take this product to adoption, and things like that? Backers also count. In fact, in criticalities, I remember we invested in a project known as FinBlocks, which got a $8 million hit on Terra. So, no, it's not Terra, sorry, 3 Arrows Capital. So, when you have backers from, like Sequoia, they actually come and help you even in times like that. So, for us, it's always about what the team has done, what capability do they have, are the backers interesting, does the project finally have any value? There are people who are planting trees and saying it's blockchain. I don't think so, but we are also looking at what, in the end, they're trying to finally build. So.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I completely agree with kind of looking for founders that have expertise in the area that they're building on, but also just the type of founder, right? Like you investing in someone that's a hustler that will keep working and that will be able to pivot, right? And that's creative enough to to leverage his resources and kind of pivot if the idea doesn't fully work out. Because ultimately, especially when you're doing these early stage investments, the idea itself obviously has to be innovative, and they have to bring something kind of new to the ecosystem, right? It can't be a copy-paste project like we've seen a lot of. But ultimately, if this project doesn't end up getting a lot of traction, having the ability and the resources to shift direction, right, and steer the ship that way. So that's important as well. We actually just finished leading the round for a treasury management solution called FIDE that actually ties into what you were speaking about risk management. So these guys have extensive experience in traditional finance, right? Banking, risk management. One of them is a quant from NASA as well. And they're really building out these tight-knit risk management solutions for DAO treasuries, which we have seen as a huge problem in this latest bear, right? I think Uniswap's treasury, like tier 1 projects like Uniswap, I think their treasury back in November was worth close to 10 billion, and then in June it fell all the way down to around 1.5 billion. So there are clearly kind of a lot of capital in the system, but not the tools necessary to allow DAOs, for example, to operate in perpetuity. So yeah, this background experience as well as kind of this hustler's mentality is super important.
Yeah, I think one of the key questions, and I was discussing this with a colleague right before we stepped on stage. There's a big difference between like making money as an investor and something that's good for the space overall. I think they're two kind of, sometimes they overlap, but they're not actually the same thing. So for example, the classical example in traditional finance is the airline industry. Airlines, obviously, like I would much rather fly from here to Dubai than to go by boat and then train and then camel or whatever it required to get there. But if you invested and you were a specific airline investor from the time period when George Orwell first flew on a plane until now, you'd probably have gone broke many times over. So as a financial investor, that was actually a terrible industry to be in, but for the progress of humanity and for technology, it was actually fantastic, right? So that's one thing. So there are two kind of, it's like a Venn diagram. There's sometimes an overlap, but not always. And so for us, you have to be really clear about like, is your purpose as an investor to grow the ecosystem only with no expectations of returns for LPs? Or are you a return ROI-based fund with profit and capital preservation as your mandate? For us, it's capital preservation as our mandate. Don't lose money is rule number 1. And then if we can make money with outsized risk-reward opportunities, we'll take them. And so for us, when we look at these projects, the key question that comes to mind is like, it could be really, really good for the ecosystem. It could be really, really good for XYZ in the space. But A, will value actually accrue to you as a business or a company or a DAO? And then if it does, is it going to accrue to your token, your NFT, your equity, your debt, or which combination of the thing, right? So I think during the bull market, because of the hype and the kind of crowd psychology, everyone kind of just like was throwing money into these things without asking any of these questions. And now we're going to see the painful repercussions of that. But I think now that capital has become much more scarce, people are becoming much more disciplined. These are important questions to ask and also to very clearly figure out for yourself, right? So the objectives of, for example, the NEAR Foundation or proximity, where it's not necessarily a pure ROI investment, is very, very different from a for-profit fund, in which case each one should then focus on different objectives and are looking for different things in different founders, right? So for us, we're looking for obviously all the things that my panelists have mentioned, capability, track record, ability to execute, but also to be operating in a niche that's defensible, that they can capture value in, and something that we will see a real objective return on investment, whether it's return on the token, whether they're going to be acquired by another company. And so all of the things that Warren Buffett talks about in value investing that's been made fun of for the past 3 years in the bull market, all comes back, right? Like how do you defend and capture value in a very, very competitive market space? And for us, it's the picks and shovels, infrastructure, potentially exchanges. And it's all about like, what makes you different? What stops other people from copying your code and doing the exact same thing that you're doing? And a lot of times it comes to, you have backers that are in the regulatory regimes and the spaces that you operate that box out anybody trying to enter that specific region. For example, one of the companies that I'm advising is Bit2Me, which is the largest Spanish exchange in Spain. They're the largest crypto exchange, and they have probably 7 different products from Launchpad to VC arm to wallet, etc. And the business is very, very interesting. It's not sexy in a bull market, but in a bear market, they're generating revenues. They have the ability to be profitable they need to be. And anybody who wants to enter into that market needs to fight basically the first mover advantage that they've had in capturing the Spanish attention, becoming the trusted partner. And something like reputation and first mover advantage can't be underestimated. And I realized this actually firsthand when one of my Spanish portfolio companies just raised their round. And I'm like, okay, where are you going to be parking your capital? They're like, I was like, the obvious choices are, Binance, FTX, Genesis, one of these big names, right? He's like, no, Bit2Me. I'm like, why Bit2Me? He's like, I know these founders personally. I know like they're good for their word. I know that when I see their balance sheet, I can trust them. And I interact with the platform much easier because it's in my native language. And so for me, like, if you are an FTX or a Binance and you want to enter into that space, it doesn't make sense a lot of times to wage war and try and capture market share from them. It's a lot of times easier to just acquire them. And so being in those defensible positions where you're rising with the tide and these big players would rather just buy you for a very high price than compete with you are really interesting businesses and really interesting niches during market times like these where revenue is actually really important.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess Dean summed up really well. I guess a little bit of background about funding opportunities within NEAR. On one hand, we got the NEAR Foundation, Proximity Lab for the DeFi vertical, and Human Guilds for games. But we also, I think all of us here are NEAR ecosystem funds, and our key motives is still, on one hand, building NEAR, but on the other hand, for profit, to be responsible for our LP. So I guess this sums up really well, like the difference about us, ecosystem funds, and all of these grants program. I guess my last question here would be, why are you guys so bullish on NEAR? What do you think NEAR as an ecosystem still need? And thus, what are you investing to plug into the puzzles and to build NEAR ecosystem, of course, from the perspective of profit making?
So, as I said, we work with other chains as well, and a lot of the other colleagues also work with chains. So, what makes NEAR more interesting is the community that's coming up. For example, I also work with Gavin, and we talk on Polkadot as well. They have a big community, but here you are seeing a lot more energy, a lot more projects being built up. So I think that is one of the key parameters that is there. In fact, we have just invested in one of the NEAR projects known as Q&Par, which I mentioned. But what I think what more needs to be done is the foundation really, because foundation is always giving up grants like 50,000. This is something that I've seen in Matic as well. But building that pipeline of really good projects which they can back it up, $50,000 in any market is easy to get, but getting right projects which finally we see backers can back all through with bigger capital and building it is something that I need to see more from NEAR. But otherwise the community is great, the projects that are coming are quite good as well.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree with you with the grant thing, right? So I think especially during the bull market, we saw a lot of alternative layer 1s or new layer 1s pop up and different L2s as well, all with this big fat checkbook. They're writing out grants. And a lot of, obviously it's great to stimulate the ecosystem by kind of supplying capital, right, and seeding the space. But I think on the other hand, the flip side, it also attracts kind of mercenary builders that are building for the sake of grants. So they're essentially grant farming, right? So they're building on, say, for example, Avalanche, Polygon, NEAR as well, and to get these kind of grants. So I think what's really important for NEAR is to be able to capture high conviction builders that are building on NEAR for the sake of wanting to build on NEAR, right? Not for the capital. So that's why I like the ethos of this conference, right? Building beyond the hype. I think it's important to have these builders that really kind of stick it through you are not really just here for the capital. But yeah, I think NEAR is super interesting. I think there's still a lot of opportunity on NEAR. It's relatively nascent as well. So I think Q&Par is a great example. I think the NFT ecosystem on NEAR is still very, very early. There's still lots of projects that could potentially be built on NEAR to make that more interesting. I think the intersection of DeFi and NFTs is also interesting, right? I feel like DeFi has been pretty stagnant for a while, but with not too much innovation. But when we see the kind of the merge between, or the parallels between what's happening with NFTs right now and ERC20 tokens back in 2017, it gets me more excited.
Yeah, so first of all, I think NEAR is amazing. If you just kind of ever meet Ilya or Marik or some of the top senior folks, it's pretty apparent like how talented, driven, and how much they believe in the ecosystem. I think from a mechanical standpoint, obviously my background is from Wall Street, so from a very practical standpoint, right? Like the whole world that we operate, which is called Web3 or crypto, the spot market is like 1 trillion right now, right? BlackRock alone managed over 10 trillion, right? Or they did prior to the market collapse. So during my thesis that I wrote when I was an executive at Polygon was like, this is cool, we have this kiddie pool right now, but at the time it was 50 basis points, right now it's probably 10 to 25 basis points of global asset value, right? So this thing that we call our entire ecosystem, as in like Bitcoin, Ethereum, stablecoins, everything, is basically like 20 basis points of global asset value on a like optimistic level. So then the question is like, what about the 99.8% of capital? How do we connect that massive ocean with this tiny kiddie pool that we have, right? And the thing is, these 99.8% of capital allocators are not like tech forward. They're not going to figure out how to download a Near wallet. They're not going to figure out how to use MetaMask. We have to basically create the ships, the tunnels, the pipeline to allow them to allocate these massive checks. For example, my buddy Xiao runs the KKR's Web3 initiative. He told me the minimum check size they write is $100 million. That's the smallest check size they do, and they manage $500 billion of assets. How do you get a fund like that to want to and also plug that capital into an ecosystem like Near? And the way to do that is basically you have to create equity-like or debt-like or some type of security-like instrument that allows them to funnel it into, most directly, obviously, the Near token, but then obviously the sub-ecosystems as well. And so strategies that I think are really important that we should look into as an ecosystem is, for example, 21 Shares, which was backed by Cathie Wood and was one of the largest asset managers in Europe, which got valued at $2 billion recently. They can basically IPO dedicated vehicles on the Swiss, Amsterdam, Paris stock exchanges. And basically by creating a Near dedicated vehicle, you allow anybody with a brokerage stock account with lots of capital, whether in a retirement account, whether in a hedge fund, whether in a private equity fund, to basically write an investment committee memo and then allocate capital, which will directly go into the Near token, right? Without those channels, without those pipes in place, you're basically stuck fighting Avalanche, Solana, Aptos, Sui in this tiny kiddie pool that just keeps drying up every time the Fed raises rates, and capital just keeps leaving the system, right? So you can either fight each other for the 20 basis points of capital, or you can basically look outside at where the big money is and find ways to bring that into our ecosystem, right? So that's my fundamental thesis, and I think it's something that Near, proximity, and the surrounding entities should be focusing on.
2 points just that I want to add, because we talked about it a lot. People talk about bull markets and bear markets, and they think the world is going to end in a bear market. We've seen enough bear markets. I think bull markets make millionaires and bear market makes billionaires. I personally believe this. These are the right times to first get in. And secondly, because a lot of people say that a lot of traditional money has to come into crypto and then we'll become big. Will it happen overnight? Not in a ecosystem that just holds 3% of the world's population. So 300 million wallets exist today, which is less than 3% of the world population. 90% of these guys are speculators. They think trading is adoption. So we're so early in this market. Give it 10, 15 years, you will see all that money flowing it. Probably we would have multi-millionaires coming out of this room who really understand where crypto is. So it's too early. We cannot just compare the conventional system to crypto. It's so damn early right now.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we have only 2 more minutes left, and I think I just close it quickly. That well, on one hand, we all are really bullish on crypto and Near, and we also believe that we need more funding coming in. And I guess from a MetaWeb's perspective, we really trust and believe in Ilya's vision of onboarding 1 billion users into Near, and I guess also crypto in general. And I guess by the way of doing it, based on Near, is to provide a simple, secure, and scalable user experience. And I think this is what Near has been focusing on building, based on a lot of the ideas of hiding the technical complexities, based on the account model. You don't need to deal with the passphrases. You have an account, and these are the things that we really like. And I think this is the only way to approach crypto that can eventually, in the longer term, more people are coming in, more funding are coming in. We got IPO companies, out of Near or out of any crypto ecosystem. I think that's a way to go. And I guess from MetaWeb perspective, we always like to invest in, company building great native assets out of Near, gaming or creator economy and, movies, anything like that, or any fundamental infra that, making Near more secure and also making the user experience in a, more easy to understand way, indexing tags, something like this. Yeah, this is what MetaWeb is approaching. But yeah, I guess in the, I just end here and see if any of you guys would want to have a final remarks before this panel ends.
I think I've said all I've had to say. I think we're good.
Okay. Great. So thank you so much for your time today, and I think we'll all be around. Let us know, and if you want to talk more about NEAR and about funding opportunities through the 4 funds here. But yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks for your patience for those who've been waiting, and welcome to the final talk in this stage today. This guest needs no introduction. It's Eric. He's my favorite speaker at NEARCON, so the stage is yours.
Much. Can you guys, can you hear me? Beautiful. I'm going to wait maybe a couple of minutes that we have a little bit more people in the room. And I would love, if that's possible, is to have, even if that noisy environment, have some interaction with you guys. And Mark is going to help us. He has the mic. Oh, wow. So my first question I have for you, who was present at my talk yesterday? I just wanted to make sure, so I'm not going to repeat the talk I had yesterday, but the key message I had with you yesterday was the following one. The Web3 promises is to build a decentralized, fully transparent world where everyone feels empowered and accountable. Those promises, and that's the only benefit of my age compared to most of you, is I was there at the beginning of the 90s at the birth of the internet. And I do remember the promises that we were making back then. And those promises were the same. And eventually, we ended up with few tech giants controlling our identities or transactions, influencing our behaviors, often for the worse and even without our knowledge. And the reason for that is all the organization at the birth of Web 1 and Web 2 had a very similar organization that we have had for the last 100 years. Vertically, lot of hierarchy, no decentralization, limited information share. So when you have that type of culture, an internal organization that doesn't match the promises that you make, you don't deliver those promises. So my message for you, and the message I delivered yesterday, if we want to deliver on all your Web3 projects, the promises of the Web3 movement, decentralization, fully transparent, empowered, and accountability, you have to have that internally. And what I'm describing is what we call self-management, the journey to self-management. And I'll come back on that in a couple of minutes. %, that's the number of people engaged in workforces. So it means that 80% of the people are either neutral or disengaged. So the way we work today doesn't work. And there is another number, 9%. When you ask people, employees all over the world, specifically in 5 key countries, if they want to become a manager, 9% of them wants to become a manager. I've been manager for the most of my career. And I would say today, with all the people I coach, being a manager today is the most difficult job in the world. Significantly more challenging than 20 years ago. And I don't think it's sustainable. So you have to redistribute the role of the manager. And that's something that a number of organizations have started to develop for the last 20 years. There's a very good book that I urge you to read. It's called Reinventing Organization. It was written by Frédéric Laloux and published in 2014. That book describes different types of organization. And I'm not going to go into the details. From organization led by fear, the power is based on fear, like the crime organization. I'm not going to describe also the type of organization like army, a lot of hierarchy, etc. But he described more recently a movement of the self-management type of organization. He called that the TIF organization. And that type of organization is like a living organism where there is limited layer of management. Organization significantly flat, where all the information is shared, where everyone feels empowered and accountable. So those type of organizations have the similar promises of the Web3 movement. And those organizations, some of them are web-related, some of not. Patagonia, Zappos, Medium. These are organizations that are implementing that type of processes. What they've done, they have changed 5 major processes. How to make decisions more collectively. And when you have more collective decision, you have to share more information in order to make sure that everyone can contribute to the decision process. And therefore, you remove that bit from the manager role. And actually, if you want to make a decision for a specific project, you're going to look at the technical expert, not necessarily the manager. When there is conflict, most of the time when there is conflict between 2 team members, it's the manager that gets involved. Why? It's not necessary. You can find someone else or a specific process to address that. Performance review. Is that necessary to have always the manager to implement performance review? Some organizations start implementing peer-to-peer performance review. So little by little, some of those organizations have removed some of the manager task and initiative and redistributed that, making the role of the manager either obsolete or significantly lighter. And therefore, having flatter organization, more decentralized, and not geographically only in terms of role and task, more transparent, and people feel more engaged and more accountable. Now, the challenge of that, and that's we get to the title of my talk today, is of course to succeed on that, you have a prerequisite. And many of those organizations that have tried to implement self-management type of processes failed. So they went back to a very hierarchical, vertical type of organization. They failed because you have to create a culture in your organization. And you have to train your team with some specific skills. And if you have to take away one single thing from today's presentation is, if you want to implement that type of organization and eventually deliver the promises of the Web3, you need to make sure that everyone in your organization, whether you have 2 people or 500 people, they have to master 3 skills: self-awareness, active listening, and how to give feedback. essential. So for the journey to self-management, you need to create what we call a coaching culture, meaning that everyone in the team, not just the manager, every employee behave as a coach. I'm a coach. I've been trained as a coach for the last 8 years. The first thing I did during my training was to improve my self-awareness, understand the positive and negative impact I have on everyone I work with. And that's our blind spot. That's our bias. It's very important. And then I learned how to listen, how to give feedback, how to ask questions. And that's the goal. If you really want to remove the manager layer, if you want to have a more decentralized type of organization, you have to develop those major skills among members of your team, you included. So what a coaching culture looks like? Well, it's a culture where everyone knows exactly the positive and impact they have and negative impact they have on everyone, and they're committed to address it. It's a culture where in the organization, everyone feels heard. Everyone knows how to give feedback. Everyone walk the talk and feels vulnerable enough to share what they really need to make a project happen or to develop a work-life balance, etc. in the organization. So that type of culture, it's a work environment where everyone feels safe to be who they are, safe to learn, make mistakes, ask questions, contribute, challenge. Alors, how to do that? The first key steps, specifically if you have an organization of, let's say, 15 people with a couple of co-founders, and they want to go into a more self-management type of organization, well, the co-founder needs to be convinced that's the right path, because it's going to be a difficult path. So they have to be convinced that they really want to develop a coaching culture in their organization. That's the first point. The second point is the picture of success, and I will come back to that in a few minutes. As I mentioned, develop those 3 skills. So develop, training, and practice those 3 skills. Self-awareness, active listening, how to give feedback. Then is to organize group coaching. Group coaching is to have, so if, for instance, you have a team of 15 people, you organize 3 groups of 4, a 4th group of 3, and those people meet every month, and they coach themselves. One of them brings a specific issue, and the other people coach their colleague. It's so powerful. So powerful how peer-to-peer coaching can address so many issues. And you can address personal issues as work issues. There is today a number of coaches available in the world. You have coaching platforms that make coaching significantly cheaper than it was 15 years ago. So you can call on external coach through those platforms. It's not as expensive as before. You can have for 1 hour coaching about $100 per hour. 10 years ago, it was like $500 per hour. You pulse, and I've developed a small pulse that you can measure every 2 weeks, the progress on the engagement of those individuals and how the coaching culture has a positive impact. And when there is success, to celebrate on that success. So it's not rocket science, but it's possible, and you have to start as soon as possible. You have a team of 5, start implementing that. You have a team of 3, start implementing that. You have a team of 2, start doing that. I'm going to focus on few of those items, but I'd love to take maybe a question. Yes?
Salut. So
So I can't hear the question. Mark, I can't hear the question.
Can you hear me now? Hear me? Salut. Salut. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Teal organizations are like very resonating with decentralization, and indeed a lot of companies implement special divisions that operate as teal organization. But eventually, how scalable are they? Can company of 500 employees or 1,000 employees work as teal organization? So I'm not sure how many employees there are at Patagonia, but how much time it took for them to arrive to this point that they're absolutely like horizontal. Yeah, that's the first question.
Thank you. So it's a great question. The challenge for organization when they were already organized vertically is to go from vertically to horizontal. That's a big challenge. And for some people, some employees, that was not sustainable. So for instance, when Zappos tried to implement that, they lost the first year 15% of their headcount, 1.5. That's quite significant. So that's difficult to implement. My point today is, for sure, the more you get bigger, more difficult it is. But today I'm not at a Google conference or a Facebook conference. I'm a Web3 conference. And in this room, there's plenty of young entrepreneurs. They have a team of 2, 20. I've discussed with many of them. You have 15, 20 people. I'm saying to you, do it now. We are still at the beginning of the Web3. That's my point. When you will be 500, maybe it will be difficult, but if you start with those foundations, I'm not worried about the 500. I'm worried now. One more question.
Yeah, thank you. So you're saying that the only thing that can help Web3 from going on the same track of Web2 and all the internet thing is to implement teal organization structure. Is this the only point that what are other big elephants in the room so that we don't get into this big tech but on the Web3 technology? So because obviously Web3 is also about mental state and psychology of the companies, not only technology. So is there any elephant in the room that we're missing except from being a teal organization?
What do you think?
Yeah. I see that the more there are big companies in Web3 that have hundreds of employees, they attract and accumulate a lot of users, like centralized exchange, centralized marketplaces for NFTs. And eventually it starts to look pretty much like the good old big tech. So I think it's size of a company, but how do you attract a lot of people, at least millions of people, into an ecosystem? Can an ecosystem of millions of people depend only on small companies, maybe mid-sized businesses, but don't get them to like enterprise level?
So I agree, it's challenging. That's why I'm very excited and feel privileged to be part of the NEAR ecosystem, and the NEAR Foundation is driving that. They asked me to make those talk yesterday and today because they believe part of their responsibility also is to take a thought leadership, if I may use the word leadership this time, to push not only within the NEAR ecosystem but in the industry that type of philosophy. They really believe in that. They try to do that internally through their own organization, and they want to show leadership on that. That's why they make that investment. and they talk about that at the Web3 ecosystem for NEAR. For sure, but it's not too late. My point is not too late, and I will keep repeating that message as much as I can. So I have just 1 minute. I just want maybe to mention picture of success. It's something very important. It's pretty basic, and actually you can have that for any of your team, Web3, Web2, Web1, or any organization. I think it's a prerequisite for anything you try to implement. Specifically, I would say in the Web3 movement, you have to check on that almost on a daily basis with your team. What is it? Is to make sure that before you try to implement anything, or start anything, that you and your team are always crystal clear in agreement what success looks like for your organization. So what's our purpose? What's our goal? What's our strategies? What's our values? What's the reputation we want to have? And you are in that Web3 industry where things change almost on a daily basis. Well, you have to check with your team, with your co-founders, always on a daily basis that you are aligned on that. So one thing I would do, I have a team of 5 people. Tomorrow morning, I give them a piece of paper to each of them, and I will ask them to answer to those 7 questions and compare the result of those 5 papers. If those 5 papers are different, you're going into trouble. You have to have those 5 papers identically. That's the starting point. And then you start training people on those skills that I mentioned about self-awareness, active listening, and giving feedback. I'm happy to take one question. I'm happy to share the deck for everyone who wants. You have my email address, you have my LinkedIn. Contact me. I have a more detailed description about active listening, self-awareness, etc. And I'm available for the rest of the day to answer any question in the conference. Thank you very much.